one, go! Okay, get that finger in the camera.
Good evening and welcome to ELOSOFUMARTAKES. This is our 310th take live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star Studio of Azle, Texas. I'm your host, Barry Duplessis, as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. This is going to be a fantastic show. It's already started off with a laugh, and we're going to keep things going tonight with some really great times with two really amazing guests. And we'll get to formal introductions in a few moments. And before we get to the formal introductions, we do have to thank the people that make this show possible. And that, of course, is our sponsors. And tonight's show is sponsored by Drew Estate. Drew Estate is at it once again, introducing a new broadleaf Gordo for a Nica Rustica from the Woodwood Safe House in Miami, Florida. Drew Estate is thrilled to announce the addition of the Gordo size. Yep, it's a 6x60 to the Nica Rustica broadleaf family. With certain packaging elements have changed throughout the years, the Nica Rustica brand proudly remains Drew Estate's tribute to the people of Esteli, Nicaragua. Moreover, the Nica Rustica broadleaf blend remains unchanged, preserving its rustic, spicy, and robust flavor profile, and always at an affordable price. Nica Rustica broadleaf is wrapped in a Connecticut River Valley wrapper, Mexican San Andreas Negro binder, and contains Nicaraguan filler tobaccos from Esteli and Jalapa. Consider a straightforward power puncher. The new Gordo 6x60 is a big cigar with big, fat flavors. It's just a flavor bomb, exclaims Jonathan Drew, founder and president of Drew Estate. So go check out your Drew Diplomat retailer today for the all-new Nica Rustica Gordo 6x60 today. And welcome, everybody. If you're tuning in live on Facebook, like we broadcast live every Saturday night at 9:30 Central, or you're listening to us later wherever you listen to podcasts, tonight's audio broadcast is sponsored by Gran Habano Cigars. Yes, Gran Habano is honest, compassionate, and has great cigars. Be sure you download, subscribe, and review today. Our audio broadcast is sponsored by Gran Habano Cigars. So without further ado, it is my pleasure, my privilege to welcome in one of tonight's guests, actually both of tonight's guests. They're both here. Yes, they are two of the very best people on the planet. This is my birthday, after all. This is my birthday bash. And so it is my pleasure to welcome in tonight's guest, sponsored by United Cigars. Smoke one today and start living United. Mr. Steve Saka and Juan Martinez. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Go, Juan. Come on, man.
Hey.
Rush to that computer.
Happy birthday, man.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
You're breathing heavy, Juan.
In a very Nicaraguan fashion. I'm late to your party, man.
It's all good.
Apologies for that.
Oh, it's all good.
Apologies for that, man.
You're here, and that's all that matters. And it's on time. You came right in time for the introduction. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, I can't believe how quick you got there.
Well,
just so everyone knows, Juan has done what I have done at least 100 times. He forgot that he was on the podcast until I called him. You know what I do? I actually set a reminder when I schedule it. I actually force myself to put a reminder in my phone the day before and 1 hour before, so it goes off, because it's so easy, man. You got so much stuff going on, and it's kind of weird, man. You're doing a podcast. What is this, like? It's like midnight or some crazy hour that he does this podcast.
Right, I was gonna say there it is. It's always the jab at the time that I do it.
So. Oh, happy birthday, Bear!
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Happy birthday, man. Happy birthday.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on, and I really appreciate it. This has become a tradition. Steve missed it last year, but for several years in a row, Steve's always been a guest, and we've over the years we've decided to bring on different.
That's true. I missed the
panels.
I did one last year. It wasn't on your birthday.
No, it wasn't on my birthday. It was a month later. You had a scheduling conflict. It's all good. Don't worry about it. Don't ruin the mood. It's fine.
Oh, dude, not like I care. What do I care? It's your birthday. I don't care about my birthday. Why am I going to care about your birthday?
Well, that's a little inside joke for the people who may be tuning in for the first time. Steve doesn't like birthdays, and so it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke.
I like them. I just think they're silly when you're a grown-ass man celebrating your birthday. I mean, it's just kind of. So hey, Bear, we'll do what you want.
Don't be miserable, man. Don't be miserable. Let that man enjoy his extra year in life in this
Let's
planet.
Just stop for a moment. Juan, if he's spending his birthday on a podcast with you and me, I don't think the man has much to live for. Let's just get rid.
I have some great cigars to live for here, so this is good. Like, this is great. This is. I mean, I can't imagine two better people spending a podcast with. So, especially on my birthday. So, thank you so much, guys. I really do appreciate it. We're gonna have some fun conversation. I know we've already kind of started everything, so let's get things kicked off here. So one, I know if I ask Steve this question, he's just going to pick one of his cigars, but I think you're more diplomatic than that, and you're just going to pick the cigar that you think that I'll enjoy most tonight. So I've got 4 cigars for you to choose from. It'll be the first that I light up tonight, and then we're going to give Steve a choice as well too. So the 4 cigars I've got going tonight are the all new Joya Cabaneta Lancero. I have Cinco de Cinco. In the Toro size, I believe here, and 2 of Steve's latest and greatest. That I have the Sin Compromiso Selection number 4. It's I guess a Robusto Grande, I guess is what you would say, Steve. 5x54.
Sure, you can call it whatever you want, man.
Yeah,
you know how this works. We just make up words to throw on these things these days. Nothing
and,
means anything anymore.
And speaking of just making up a name, the Umbagog Bronzeback is the other cigar that I have.
Totally made up.
So those are your choices. What am I lighting up tonight to start things off?
I will go with the Sin Compromiso number 4, man.
Okay.
I think that's the Lancero.
Well, are you gonna smoke 4 of them?
I'm gonna smoke 2, so I'll do that. I'll do the Sin Compromiso.
Dude, have you ever been on this podcast? This guy goes to it's gonna be like 8 hours or some shit. It's crazy how long he's on this thing.
Oh, I have. Well, actually, Steve is right. Maybe you should start with the Cabineta, which is
okay. I'll do that.
A milder smoke.
I will do that. All right.
I think I still have like 4 bundles of those Cabanetas from the first time when you met.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah, you do have some legendary history in that famed humidor of yours, Steve. You've given me some gems.
Just I can't throw anything away.
You've given me a few gems over the years for sure. All right. Well, let's light this baby up here. But quick question. I mean, it is the season du jour and everything. Do you guys have any plans for Halloween? Any costumes? Any costume parties that are going to be attended this year, or already have maybe?
No, brother, topic to home, man. Today was a chaotic day at home because my kids' costumes did not arrive on time.
Oh.
So it was today for the celebration. So they didn't do anything.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Dude,
no, we don't do much.
Go as a ghost. That's what go as a ghost. Poke 2 holes in a sheet and call it done.
It was a vampire, man. The vampire didn't come on time.
Oh, geez.
The vampire costume was this year for the kid, man. It didn't come on time. No, we don't celebrate down here. We don't celebrate Halloween per se, although we have some Nicaraguan traditions, which are Dia de los Muertos comes just after Halloween, so we celebrate that a bit more, the Day of the Dead, and just for the kids generally, man. So Halloween is U.S. party for you guys. Steve does dress up a lot.
Oh yeah, all the time. I've decided I'm going to go as a grumpy old man this year. Going to be a really unique costume.
What about you?
We'll be doing some stuff later, obviously, this week and stuff. So, but my boys went to a trunk or treat tonight, and they both are dressed as Indiana Jones. And I'll post a picture and link it in the show notes because they're freaking adorable as heck. It's they kept talking about the whips they had, and I was like, oh my god, this is going to be a disaster. The thing's, something's going to get like permanently scarred with my 2 kids just having whips. So they're 9 and my youngest just turned 5 earlier this week. So they're chaos in little child form, but they're a hoot and a holler.
I think Halloween is a holiday that's like definitely a children's holiday, and maybe you extend it into your young adult years as a reason to just get dressed up and drink. You know what I mean? But once you get to be about, I don't want to put an age on it, but once you're kind of out of college years, Halloween doesn't seem like much of a holiday that gets celebrated.
Well, I mean, you've already kind of made a declaration of, that birthday shouldn't be really celebrated by adults anymore.
All these holidays off. My whole goal is to put Hallmark out of business.
Yeah.
So that's just so we're clear on this.
I think they're doing a pretty good job of doing that themselves, actually. So other than the movie channel. But I think I agree. I honestly stopped. I don't enjoy dressing up haven't for years. Like even in like my late teens and even into early adulthood, to Steve's point, it just wasn't, I don't know. I just didn't really enjoy it,
Look, I
but I
appreciate
think
those
it's great.
parents that go the extra mile and they do the costumes along with their kids. I'll give them points for that. I'm not going to hold that against anyone, but it's really hard to come on. 59-year-old dude getting dressed up to celebrate Halloween. It does go a little bit on the perv meter, it's a little
It's a little bizarre. What do you do for Dia de las Muertas, Juan? Do you guys have any fun family traditions?
Yeah, my oldest daughter decided that a while ago that she wanted to honor her dead in the family, our dead, So we set up an altar with all the pictures of all of the family members, like the typical Mexican and Latin American tradition. And we do that. We'd spend a week basically. They set it up this weekend, and they just have their grandparents, their great grandparents, and every single member of the family that has passed away, and then during the week they bring the stuff and the remembrance, and the family members come over and they talk about the history of whoever they
Yeah.
who's ever in the picture that day. So it's nice. It's nice. It's the only moment when we get to remember many people we didn't even know, that passed
Yeah.
away. My parents, grandparents, and talk about the history. It's a good starting conversation during the week for them to learn about their family history. That's a pretty big tradition at this house, at least. Yeah, at our house.
Do you like candles?
We light candles, yeah. Yeah. And then we start experimenting on what happens with the candles when you put a lot of things into the candle, like plastic and metal and water and whatever.
Like every other like red-blooded male. A
Yes.
candle is just an excuse to play with the wax. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
how old you are. That's something you can't grow out of, Steve. I refuse to. I refuse
Playing
to
with
believe
fire. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. This has been a recent tradition in recent years, but we started. I set up the ofrenda on our dining room table, and so like each night, for dinner, like one of my kids can pick one of the people on the ofrenda, and my idea is I tell a story about that particular individual, so they learn a little bit about
That's
it.
beautiful, man.
So
That's beautiful.
so we do something pretty similar with that. So that's pretty cool. All right. Well, really, like that kind of leads us to diving into tonight's major point. So before I kind of do this introduction, this is a really cool experience. You guys have a pretty big connection in the professional world, but yet you two have never done a podcast together before. So
No.
I really appreciate
I'm actually quite scared of doing a podcast with Steve.
And I just have to give up so much airtime. I'm a little bit disappointed.
Well, I made note of something you said years ago, Juan, where I had you on the week before Steve, and you said you felt really great because it was the first time you'd ever someone would pick you before him. So I was like, you know what? Let's just get you two together and let's just make a party of it. So, but tonight's page report is brought to you by Gran Habano Cigars from the fertile lands of Honduras. George Rico and his family have put together the very best vintages for you. Yes, you, the cigar smoker. From value-based hits like Corojo No. 5 to the award-winning 20th anniversary to special projects like Zulu Zulu, Gran Habano is about cultivating the best and making pinnacle cigars for the market. Culture, tradition, quality, premium, handcrafted Gran Habano cigars. And
I have a question. Do I sponsor this program?
You do.
Good. Can we skip my ad?
No, because it's my favorite part to make you cringe every time that you're on.
Every time, yeah, I don't know.
I'll see what I can do to make it less whimsical. Okay, how about that?
I didn't write it. I can guarantee you that, folks.
Make him say it. What better ad will you have than Steve narrating himself?
I didn't write it, so I have no idea what he says, but I can already tell that it's going to be a little too fluffy for me.
I toned it down at your request. I remember. Yes, yeah, I toned it down at your request. I sent you a draft.
Like I read that.
Well, I took your criticism at face value, and I still made an edit, so it's fine.
Well, what you don't know, Bear, is that Steve, and one of my first exposures in my life to Steve was reading his his ads and his press releases, man. And this is way before we got creative with AI. Now that you can improve everything with AI, right? This is
Right.
early on, and he would be a master. He was, you should have been a poet in your other life, man, because you could find words. We still use in our brand some narratives from Steve's first take on our company or our brand, because the way he put it, the way he articulated it was masterful, man. So you should be careful with sending him anything you write, because he's gonna come back with you with rewritten forms.
You
Well,
know, a lot of that
welcome.
stems from when I worked for Lou, because I mean, you had to bang out, a 60-page catalog every 2 months, and 60, sometimes 60, yeah, 60 pages. That's about right. 48 to 60 pages. And you gotta come up with a lot of words to fill 60 pages, man. It's tough. And particularly when you're talking about all stuff that's just brown and round and that you light on fire. You gotta come up with some words, man.
Yeah.
But I mean, you never cease to amaze me though, Steve, how like you demean yet uplift in the same like almost breath sometimes. Like you talk about how things are brown round and you set it on fire. But to Juan's point a moment ago, you do have an incredible way with words in these projects that you put together and everything. And you find you find the words regardless. So
All
I
before
think it's a compliment.
ChatGPT existed. Good
Yeah.
God, I don't even know how we did it.
So, but so much to Steve's chagrin. One is there? Do you have a memorable birthday? I don't want to ask you what your favorite birthday was, because then Steve will really roll his eyes, and start to drink a little bit more heavily too early. But what's the what's your most memorable birthday experience?
Oh man, my most memorable was about 4 years ago that I got appendicitis. How do you say it in English?
Appendicitis, yeah.
Appendicitis.
Yeah.
The day of my birthday.
Oh
So
my gosh.
I went to the hospital the day of my birthday. Got it taken out of me, and it was just starting COVID. So you can imagine that being
Oh,
in the hospital for one day, for one night, being operated, it was a very memorable birthday, man.
that's right, because you were actually you were supposed to be on a show with Coop and I that night,
I think
or the day after, or
it
something
was
like
it
that.
was one of those days. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was one
that's
of those
crazy.
days. I had to cancel because I got that,
Oh my gosh.
and that was memorable. That was memorable. You can say. I'm a bit like Steve. I don't do much birthday. My family loves birthday, but I hate it. I get cranky. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a childhood trauma or something, but it's just I don't celebrate birthdays, man.
Well, I get why Steve's a little crotchety about it, because he even though we were honestly talking about this before the show, he runs around with the energy of a 25-year-old, or more than most 25-year-olds I know. But he just doesn't like the idea of getting older. But
No, it's not that I don't like the
you're
idea of
still
getting
young.
older. I don't like the look. It's just kind of, I don't know. It's look, I think major milestones like the decades, that doesn't bother me as much. You know what I mean? But I mean, those in between birthdays, they seem a little silly. I mean, birthdays are for children. Birthdays are when you're 18, maybe 21 with your first drink kind of thing. But for men after that, it just seems a little silly. And then I guess maybe you could argue maybe your 40th, 50th, 60th, 75th, something like that. I might give a pass on it, but no. I don't know. Birthdays they just seem like any other day, really. I mean, I don't know. I don't
The
feel
the,
very.
the irony is that we work in a business that we celebrate every single
Well,
Of
that
course.
was
anniversary.
actually my next question. So yeah, like
Yeah, next year's my 60th. You think I'm gonna miss the opportunity of selling a 60th birthday cigar? Hell no, man. I'm gonna take
okay.
them dollars.
It's actually your 60th, man.
Yeah, next year.
Wow. We're gonna
Yeah.
have
So yeah,
Yeah,
and,
it's pretty
and 10
distant
years
third.
and 10 years of Dunbarton, right?
Yeah, next year will be our 10th, which kind of like I really want the focus to be on the 10 years of Dunbarton and on the 60 years of Saka. So I don't actually right now have a plan to do a 60th
you
birthday
could be
cigar.
like Rocky and do your birthday and your milestone.
Yeah,
And
and look, I don't begrudge people that do. Um, it just isn't for me. And I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too old fashioned in that way. It just seems like more, and we'll get myself in trouble already. It just seems more like a chick thing than a guy thing. I mean, I know, send the hate, I'll take it. But I don't know. I don't feel the same way. Like when a woman wants to celebrate her 38th birthday, I'm like, okay, great. You know what I mean? Doesn't bug me. But when a dude says I'm gonna celebrate my 38th birthday, I'm just kind of like, really?
It's 41st. It was 41st
Look,
this time, Steve. It's 41 today.
steak dinner, a good drink, good cigar, maybe a little something something afterwards. There you go. That's a good birthday celebration if you're a dude, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, well, and that brings about a good point. So again, Quad, you hit the nail on the head. I was going to use this as a segue into this. Joya de Nicaragua has done a marvelous job of putting together, like, there are a lot of companies out there. Again, I'm not going to name names necessarily, but like they frankly just kind of mail in the milestone or skip them altogether. But you guys have really taken milestones and made it part of the fabric of the artwork of what Joya de Nicaragua is, and
I
we
have a
really
guest
honor
here
it.
that wants to say happy birthday to you, man.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay, no, sorry for that, man.
Oh, it's okay. That's
Wow.
wonderful.
She must be in every single podcast, every single video that I do,
I
every
love it.
single one.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, man. We started because when we turned 40, when the company turned 40, I was coming into the business actually. This is 2008. And we didn't do anything special. The company didn't do anything special to celebrate it. We had a party in Nicaragua, but we didn't do anything special to commemorate, and it was a moment where a lot of people were coming into the business from Nicaragua or based in Nicaragua, starting larger companies that we know today. And Hoya did not get enough credit of having been the first one. So that's where we decided, let's start showcasing a bit more and having the excuse to talk more about all of the contributions and the heritage and the culture and the history that this company and that this group of people bring to the table. And that's when we started with Cuatro Cinco, actually. The 45th anniversary was the first time we started sort of showcasing the first milestone cigar and celebrating it, and then telling the story through every single milestone year that we had. Because as you well know, we've had a very rich, complex history, and it's worth telling. It's worth telling, not shying away. And what better moment to commemorate those that every time that you hit another milestone? Because every 5 years we have a lot to tell. We feel, we turn 50 and we say, wow, we turned 50. What will the next 50 say? Look at us, man. We went through, political conflicts in Nicaragua in 2018, to the COVID era, to a new era for cigar industry. It's a whole new world compared to where we were in 2018 when we turned 50. So it's a good moment to sit down, look back, and continue embracing the history and the trajectory that has brought us where we are. And that's going to take us into the future. We believe, and Drew Estate was very good at that moment, and Steve was particularly eminent in telling the story of Joya de Nicaragua, because that's the only way for us to really understand how we are where we are today through our history, that in a way also tell us where we're heading, our future. Our future is going to be based on our past and our present. So that's why we started telling, not just to put another number into the cigar, but having the reason and the excuse for ourselves and for our customers and our clients to appreciate the work that we've been doing, the company has been doing for such a long time. And that's how we see it. That's why every single 5 years, every group of years, 5, 10 years, we try to showcase that in different forms, through a cigar, through a book, through a lot of stories being told.
Beautiful. That was one of my favorite moments of this past PCA was just the interview that you and I had the good fortune to have. One was just it was a really incredible learning experience because, like you said, you guys have a tremendous story, and then I learned even more around this time, just about the history of the name, like Joya de Nicaragua, and how and Esteli itself, and how you guys are, as you guys are moving forward, how you're honoring not only your country but also the town that's given so much to this industry.
Yes, because ultimately, we are the oldest Nicaraguan cigar company, the oldest, and not because of us, because we haven't been in the business for as long as the company has been as a family, but for the people who are there, who have been there for many, many decades. And the town of Esteli ultimately is the epicenter of and the reason of being for all of us, for most of us in the business nowadays, through its tobacco, through its cigars, through its people, through the factories and the companies that have been established. So our brand stands for paying tribute to the country and to the city where all of this is based. So we try to talk more about it, not make it the center of our message, but talk more about that because it gives us a lot of reasons for people to connect back to Nicaragua, to connect back to the roots, to the quality of the tobacco, to the flavor profile that Nicaragua cigars provide, so on and so forth. So we always try to bring back people to Nicaragua, both physically, but also through our communication, through our messages, and things like, from the diamond that we use now as a symbol of our brand. People think it's jewel, diamond, that might be a relation, but it's actually the diamond is because that's the nickname of Esteli, the city where we're based, which is the Diamante de las Segovias, diamond of the Segovias. And that's why we use it. It's the most powerful, the strongest city, most economically powerful city in northern Nicaragua. That's the symbol, and that's how we use it to showcase where we come from, a way of, being proud of our origins as a way of saying it.
That's beautiful. Steve, you've been a part of so many incredible iconic releases at the various posts that you've had, including obviously everything that you've built here at Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. But I was thinking back, and I apologize if I missed something. I was thinking back, have you been part of a true milestone cigar experience, or will the 10th anniversary that you guys are going to be celebrating, will that be the first time that you've been able to really celebrate a big milestone?
Well, I got forced to do the Drew Estate 5th anniversary on acid when it was already like its 8th year because they didn't get to it. So it was like 3 years late when I joined the company. So I was involved in one of the early acid ones. And then I did some when I was at JR for like what was it? It was La Excepcion. I did some there. But no, I've never actually done a traditional anniversary cigar. So this will be the first one. Look, it's not normally something it's one of those weird things. It's not normally something I gravitate towards as a consumer personally. So I think that's one of the reasons why I've never done one before. It never personally held a lot of appeal, but for some reason this go around it does. And I think part of it's because I have a blend that I think is really suiting for it. And look, I don't know if there'll be a 20th anniversary for Dunbarton. So I might as well get one out of the way in case I don't make it to the 20th. So we're gonna do a 10th, and I'm not even quite sure how I'm gonna package it yet. The problem that you have with the packaging of anniversary cigars is you feel the natural inclination to package it in a very celebratory way, right? But I don't know. I haven't quite wrapped my brain around exactly what I want to do yet. So I'll figure it out. I mean, luckily
Let me
cigar's easy. Bands are already, well, the primary band's already been printed and delivered, and then the secondary band is being printed right now. So luckily, so cigars won't be a problem, bands won't be a problem. what I'm going to stick the cigars in, I have yet to really figure out.
Bear, let me throw back the question to you because Steve mentioned something interesting, which is him as a consumer, he doesn't gravitate towards those brands or those cigars that
Sure.
are celebratory. What about you? What about you and your followers? Do you guys feel that this is something that we might overdo, perhaps, or this is something that you appreciate, or is it something that we should be thinking because the issue with our industry is that we don't think enough outside of the box. And I give credit to Steve in this sense, not because he's here, but in general, he's very creative in the way he names and identifies his products. There's a very deep meaning in every single cigar that he makes, from sobremesa to sin compromiso to nacatamale that he doesn't even spell right, but it does have a meaning and a personal connection for him. Most consumers don't even appreciate that, perhaps because they don't even know what a nacatamale is, and you might even not know what a nacatamale is. But my question is to you, man. As you see so many companies around, so many brands that we tend to repeat constantly what we've done in the past and what everybody else is doing. Do you think that there's any value to that name, or should we be thinking differently?
That's a really great question. That's a really great question, Juan, and I really appreciate you asking it. I think there's two ways to answer this question. I am, as a consumer, I am absolutely a sucker for it. If I see an anniversary cigar, or if someone's coming out with an anniversary cigar, it's something I naturally get excited about. I don't know what it is. I can't tell you, and I guess it's part of the allure of like, oh, to Steve's point, this is something that's supposed to be celebratory. It's supposed to be something special. So I have this expectation that it's going to be just fantastic, and a lot of them are. And there are some of my favorite cigars from other companies are anniversary cigars. I love the Quesada 40th anniversary. I think it's probably my favorite blend that Manolo Quesada has ever done, and that's saying something
It
considering
makes sense though.
what he's
You
done.
have to think that the company's going to put a little bit of extra juice into that. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Well,
Understanding that it's maybe an anniversary product.
you would think that, but then but to counter that point and to answer one, I think it is overdone in the sense that a lot of people, and I said it earlier, a lot of companies, it feels like they mail it in. It feels like
Mhm.
it gets mailed in a lot, and it's just another opportunity to put out another release, and it doesn't pass muster for me. And now again, that's my personal palate, and that's what you can chalk it up to. But there are some anniversary cigars
Let me ask you
that
this,
still aren't the
Bear.
market.
Are most of these anniversaries like, do they go on forever? Or are they like mostly one and done kind of things? Because I don't pay
Oof.
attention too much to it. Like, you guys still make Cuatro Cinco's, no?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do every milestone cigar that we call it, we leave it as a brand. So it's a brand in itself. Like
Right.
Cinco Decas, Cinco de Cinco. We use those to launch a brand that is celebratory to that moment, but it has a continuation. So that's just one and done. It's in those cases at least.
Now, does the packaging on them tie together? Because I remember Cuatro de Cinco in the black and kind of gold. And I remember the Cinco de Caras, but the packaging doesn't exactly tie together, does it? Doesn't have a uniform look to it, is I guess what I'm asking. And I
There's
know
different
everybody's saying, how does
colors.
he not know this? But really, I'm in my own little bubble. And
Yeah, no, 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 that's fine. They do have some. We all use the names, and there's always a play with the number in the name, like cuatro cinco, 4 5, cinco décadas, obviously 5 decades,
right.
cinco de cinco, which
Yeah.
is a five exactly.
Can't really
There's
see it. There's
always
the 55 is inverted on it. It's
yeah,
pretty cool.
we always put, I don't know what's called in English, the anagrams of the numbers and the names together and the letters together. Um, but we don't have one that's specifically for one birthday. They just remain for as long as they are successful and people still consume it. We keep the brand ongoing. We keep the
Is that
brand.
normal, Bear, or most of those? I mean, can you still buy
Yeah, I
Rocky
was
Patel 50th? I don't know. I'm assuming he made one for his 50th birthday. I mean,
yeah, I think for the most part, That's a really good question. It
No,
seems like some are. I think this is just an overused
like
statistic, but
Perdomo they're still making their 10th anniversary though,
yeah,
right?
Perdomo's an example that does what Juan does at Hoya. They've got the champagne that still exists. The 20th still exists, and now the 30th just came to market, and that's going to be a brand for them as well. You can still get Quesada 40ths. I know that. There are a lot of them that are limited. So, and I think that I don't think this is an overarching commentary, but it seems to me that like more tenured brands seem to make brands out of them, like Hoya and
Right.
Perdomo, for example, Quesada, and then less tenured brands make them a little bit more limited. And I don't think there's necessarily a right or a wrong in terms of making it a brand or not making it a brand. The right or wrong comes to be, is it a good cigar? Is it not a good cigar? Because I just find that a lot of them just tend to.
We also have to assume that the more less tenured brands don't maybe have the capacity to
Right.
make it an
And
ongoing
that's fair.
production item. They're trying to make something special and unique,
Yeah.
but they
And
don't
that's
have the inventories of tobaccos necessary to make it a continuing concern, probably in a lot of cases.
totally fair. Totally fair. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, no, I just thought this would be an interesting conversation given that I couldn't recall, and it doesn't sound like you were a part of any massive milestones, but you've got one coming up, Steve, and given what Juan and
I
his
think
company.
massive is a bit of a stretch. I mean, it's 10 years. Happy to get to 10 years, don't get me wrong, but I don't know that it's massive. But it's very hard for me to see a future where we are going to go, the 30th anniversary. I'm going to be long dead by then. So,
Oh man,
Jeez, don't say such a thing.
don't bet on that, man.
oh, come on. Let's get real here. Guys, there's no way I'm living to 90. Come on. I guess I only got to live to 80.
Yeah.
Oh, but I'm not going to be making cigars when I'm 80 years old or pretending to make cigars even.
All right. This was an interesting question from the chat one. Where does Dos Cientos come into play in the anniversary lines?
Well, that actually was a cigar that we launched for the bicentennial of the independence of Hispanic America. So in 1521, no, in 1821, sorry, Central America and most of the Latin American countries got their independence from the Spanish crown, and it was very well celebrated around our region because it's an important moment, obviously, as you guys would have been the Independence Day too. And the 200 years for us was a good way of putting together an experience related to the different origins of tobaccos, because we as Hoya specialized in Nicaraguan tobacco. We talk a lot about Nicaraguan history and our heritage, but we wanted to pull together all of those countries for whom tobacco has played an important role in their history. So most people don't know this, and we actually wrote a book a while ago on this, on the history of tobacco as a relevant product from our history. Tobacco used to be one of the biggest sources of revenue for the colonies back in the 1700s and 1800s. For Nicaragua, Honduras, Costa Rica, all of the regions before we were independent. And it was actually one of the reasons why we got independent, because all of the riches coming from tobacco went directly to the crown, and nothing was left in our region. So the people who started the independence movement actually began protesting the fact that most of the money did not remain for the benefit of the people who were producing the crop, which was tobacco. So it was one of the catalysts of the independence for Nicaragua and for most of the countries in our region. And we wanted to showcase that element of the relevance on what role tobacco has played in our cultural, political, and economic heritage as a region. And that's where Dos Cientos came from. It was a one-off. We launched it only in 2021 for the 200 years, and it brought tobaccos from Nicaragua, Honduras, Dominican Republic, Mexico, and Ecuador, the countries that were subject of this colonial rule. And it's a good way to experiment with a nice blend that we hadn't worked in the past.
That's awesome. What a beautiful project. That was a great cigar. That brings up a good point though about working with different tobaccos. So, Steve he's taken on several projects where he's used, I will just say, very unique strains of tobacco, from everything from Wisconsin Comstock to most recently with the Black Angus FSG from Jeff Borschowitz's Florida Sungrown Farm.
Joya de Nicaragua, I might add.
Yes. So, but and that might be the answer to the question, Juan. But as a brand, has Joya de Nicaragua, have you guys ever experimented with something outside of what may be considered more traditional tobaccos from other countries and from Nicaragua itself, or have you guys experimented with anything what we would consider the mainstream consumer would consider unique, quote unquote?
Well, we generally we work with most tobaccos from most origins, except I would say obviously Cuba that we don't have access to. But we have tobaccos from basically all over the world. Until, let's say, 25 years ago, we primarily used Nicaraguan tobacco. 99% of what we did was Nicaraguan tobacco. But slowly, as more countries came in line, becoming more popular in production and expanding their production, we started adding them. We use a lot of tobacco from Ecuador. Some of Steve's blends and some of our blends used a lot of tobacco, both in the Havana seed and the Connecticut seed. We use tobaccos from Mexico. We use tobaccos from Honduras. We use tobaccos from the DR. But most of them are mainstream tobaccos. We use some broadleaf in a very rare occasion. We use tobaccos from Brazil. We've used tobaccos from Costa Rica, from Panama, from Colombia, from obviously Africa, and from Asia too, from Cameroon and from Indonesia. So we pretty much work with a lot, even though our core continues to be Nicaraguan tobacco.
But you really dramatically expanded your palette of tobaccos, probably.
Oh yes,
10
yes.
years.
Yes, especially over the past 10, 15 years, I would say. We started working much more. Yeah. So before, for example, Antaño, that was our legacy brand. It's a Nicaraguan puro, 100% Nicaraguan tobacco to the core, from the fillers to the binder to the wrapper. But now most of our blends that we come out with have tobaccos or use tobaccos from other origins. Mm-hmm. Cinco de Cinco, the one that you're going to be smoking later on, uses the wrapper from Mexico. Binders from the Dominican Republic we use. So we have expanded as the industry has grown, and as Nicaragua has also gotten more saturated, and there's so much you can do with only one origin, right? Even though we do have a lot of origins inside of Nicaragua, we can be using tobaccos from Estelí, from Jalapa, from Condega, from Pueblo Nuevo, from Ometepe. We try to mix it up a bit because people want to experiment other flavor profiles too. Even though, again, as I say, for most of our cigars, most of the tobacco comes from Nicaragua.
You mentioned a country that I very rarely hear, and I can't honestly recall off the top of my head a cigar that had any of it in it, but you mentioned Panamanian tobacco. What are some characteristics of Panamanian tobacco? And I mean, is that something that you guys have plan on using, or like just kind of?
No. We used it. We used it a while ago. We experimented with it, but it's not a tobacco that it's for a variety of reasons. Remember that the quality of the tobacco is not only a result of the soil and the climate where it's grown, or the geography where it's grown. It also has to do a lot with the capacity of the growers, their techniques, their technology, their sorting, their selection, their aging also. And in Panama, there's not a big tobacco, let's say, raw tobacco industry developed, or in Costa Rica or in Colombia. We've used it more as a filler, complementing some blends. but they tend not to be very special. They don't contribute a lot
The way
of.
I was gonna say, it's lifeless and limp. That's the way I feel about most Panamanian
Well, better
tobacco.
put like that.
Yeah, the
Like
same way I feel about
Colombian
most
tobacco.
Peruvian tobacco. Most Peruvian is rather just kind of. I know. Look, I know. The challenge you have is you're competing in a highly competitive market, and you're trying to come up with something that's going to separate you from your competitors. You're trying to provide something unique to the consumer. So sometimes adding an ingredient that the ingredient is more sexy in name than in reality. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's the way I feel about Peruvian tobaccos that I've looked at and used over the years. So I've never actually used Panamanian. I've made some blends with it, but again, I've never been really overly impressed. The only thing out of Costa Rica maybe is some of the Marron, but it's so hit and miss as to when you can get good Marron versus just the average Marron that's a very hard road to go down, to make a real product out of it. So, a lot of these kind of unique kind of tobaccos, they're unique in name, but there's a reason why they're not popular. There's a reason why factories aren't using them and building brands around them. Either A, the tobacco in itself isn't all that interesting, or B, there really isn't a good supply of it that's sustainable in the quality that you need. So it's nice to put on the sales sheet. It's nice to have as a talking point, but the
Exactly.
reality of actual execution rarely, there's a reason why these tobaccos from Nicaragua and Honduras and certain seed strains from the Dominican, there's a reason they're popular.
Yeah.
You know?
No,
and
that
and,
makes
and to
sense.
add to that, not only the quantity and the stability of the supply is key. Most of these are not big growers that can sustain a long-term operation, but also the consistency. We've experimented with tobaccos from X grower in X country, and the next year the tobacco is completely different
Mhm.
because the way small batches or small productions are not necessarily aligned with as what factories need over time, which is the consistency. You need
Yeah.
the consistency to be able to guarantee over time that flavor profile. So it ends up being useless not being able to have that tobacco throughout
Long,
time
long
in the
term.
consistent quality and flavor and properties that you want that tobacco to have over time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I find it really interesting, just about just like how palettes work and stuff. Because Steve makes a lot of most of his cigars. I'm really high on, and they really hit my palate incredibly well. And what Steve's remark about Peruvian tobacco specifically, because I find Peruvian tobacco to in a lot of blends to really add the really nice floral and citrus note that I really enjoy in some cigars.
And is
So
that
it's
because
funny.
of Peruvian tobacco, or is it because of some other ingredient that they've told you is
It
Peruvian?
might be the mix put on it. Like I've smoked Peruvian like farm rolls, like
Right.
puros, and that those are the notes that I get, and so I really enjoy that about it. But I think that's funny that like you're obviously not high on it at all, but
No.
you make cigars that really cling to my
I find it
palate
I
as
find
well
it to be
too.
a rather dull tobacco overall. So I mean, you're saying you enjoy it. What are some cigars I should try that feature Peruvian tobacco that are worth sampling?
I think that like this is gonna sound like I'm talking about a sponsor, but I am talking about a sponsor. I think George does some great stuff with Gran Habano. He uses Colombian and Peruvian tobacco quite a bit in
Hmm.
his blends. And that's what I really like about a lot of his blends is that floral citrus note that you get from a lot of his blends in particular. The 20th anniversary was really one of my favorite cigars. It was my number one cigar last year, and I find that to be a really good component of the blends. Um, Interestingly enough, I thought it was interesting because you didn't get that much of it, but yet it was still a fantastic blend, which was the Maria Lucia that Luciano put out a couple years ago. He has Peruvian tobacco in that as well, and I thought that was interesting with that Ometepe, and then he had broadleaf on top of it before he switched to a different wrapper, I believe. But that was a dynamite blend as well too. So, um, but I think yeah, if you haven't smoked any of Georgia stuff in a while, it might be worth a some research for you. But
Duly noted.
the before we kind of go things into a couple of other things that I wanted to talk about with unusual tobaccos. So, like you mentioned, your project with FSG, Steve, being made at Joya de Nicaragua. What was the more challenging tobacco out of those two unique ones that I mentioned? I know you've worked with
Oh, by far
dozens.
the FSG, because I don't like it.
Okay.
I mean, the FSG to me, it's
Over the Wisconsin Comstock, you
Wisconsin Comstock is it's a variety of broadleaf. It's just grown in Wisconsin, right? So I mean, it's in the broadleaf family. So Comstock is kind of a mail it in kind of tobacco for me. I like Comstock. I would use it more if I could get it, but I can't get enough of it. So therefore, it ends up in very small places. You'll see the Wisconsin Comstock sometimes used in like one of the TGS releases or one of the things that I do in very small, 500 boxes, 10 count box kind of stuff, because there's not a good steady supply of Comstock. Whereas I already lost track of what we were talking about because I'm looking
FSG.
at something else. FSG. Yeah, FSG, look, it's like all tobaccos, right? I'm not a fan of Dominican Allure. I never have been. There's something about Allure that just has never suited my palate well. But there's tons of people that absolutely love Dominican Allure. I mean, or Davidoff wouldn't be in business, right? So Davidoff uses it in a lot of their blends. For me, it's just something that's just never suited me. And that's the way I've always felt about FSG. FSG has always struck my palate with a kind of a unique sourness to it that just never suited me. So for me, the challenge was so Joya makes the cigar with the FSG in it, but Joya doesn't do any of the bulking of that tobacco. It's basically delivered to them kind of ready to go. Because we're doing all the bulking of that tobacco over at Prosenixa. But it was really a more question of how can we work this tobacco to get it to a form where I could use it in a blend that I would find palatable, but also not completely rob it of that kind of odd sour twinge, because you don't want to beat the tobacco into submission. So, because look, the people that like FSG, they like it for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So the challenge is, how do I take this tobacco that I know doesn't particularly suit me and make it to where I like it, but also don't rob it of the characteristic that the people that like FSG, that I just basically steal all the FSG-ness out of it. And I know FSG-ness, that's a new word, but you know what I mean? So that was kind of the challenge with that particular tobacco. And in my case, it was extra hard because I chose to use the most FSG of the FSG because I only took the top 2-3 leaves off from the crop. I took the tobacco that nobody else really wanted to deal with because it is the most sour of the sour. Now it's the strongest of the FSG, but in that strength, you also get more of the flavor of it. So really, with the FSG project, I mean, we're going into our 4th year. I mean, it's going to be almost 4 years from the point that I picked up the tobacco. I went to the farm and selected it to the point that we're actually putting the cigar in the box, because we pretty much spent the first whole year on it, just playing with it, trying to figure out how to ferment it properly, because you're getting it as a raw farm crop. It's coming cured out of the barn, okay, but it hasn't been fermented in any way whatsoever. So we were sticking in Habano pilones, we were sticking it in broadleaf pilones, we were sticking it in a whole bunch of different some Mexican stuff that we were working on to try to figure out what's the right temperature, what's the right humidity, how long do we have to work it. And there was never enough tobacco to build its own pilone, right? Because I'm only dealing with enough tobacco to make 17,000 cigars. I think I got somewhere like around 300 cases of it. So it was like roughly, I don't know, I think in the end, not 300 cases. What am I saying? I got 30 cases of it. What am I? Yeah, my head is exploding. That's not even true. I got 330 pounds of it. So that's 3 cases. Yeah, it was only 3 cases of tobacco.
3
Yeah, it
cases.
was 3 cases. Yeah. So say, boy, the liquor's already kicking in, man. So yeah, it was like 3 cases of tobacco. So it wasn't like a lot of tobacco to even play with. So we had to be very, a couple of hands jammed in here, a couple of hands jammed in there, go 4 months, go 6 months, go 8 months, until we kind of figured out what I was the most happy with it coming out of the Polones before we even got into, hey, let's try to make a blend out of it now. So that was a very, very challenging tobacco, because look, to build a Polone out of that, it's very heavy, thick leaf. You would probably need about, I don't know, 3,800 pounds, 4,000 pounds to build a proper Polone out of it. That'd be about the lowest you could probably, maybe you could get away with 3,400, but I don't think so. I think you'd have to be really pushing up in the 4,000 pound number for the Polone to work. So you're kind of forced to feed it into other Polones in order to work that tobacco. And you couldn't arrest it when you were arresting the other Polone necessarily. Sometimes it continued from one Polone to then ultimately in the end, it actually had to go through two different other tobaccos Polones to get it to where I wanted. And they're actually two different varieties of tobacco. So it kind of went through two first fermentations almost. Is kind of the way it ended up ultimately working in two different varieties to get the leaf to a point that I'm like, okay, this is something I feel like, okay, I got something to now work with. And then started making blends. And originally, the blends I was making were over at Hoya. The initial blends were over at Noxa, and I was never really satisfied with combining it with the ingredients that I was using over at Noxa. And then I started playing around with it over at Hoya. And ultimately, we hit upon a blend that I liked over from Juan de Nicaragua. I really like this FSG project now. I'm very interested to see how consumers are going to feel about it. I think it's a really good cigar, and I think it's one that people that don't particularly are not maybe fans of FSG that will still really enjoy the cigar. But I also think it's got enough of that twinge in it that it still will be recognizable. So I think it kind of walks this kind of odd tightrope from a flavor smoking experience that hopefully I've made something that it's definitely unique. It's definitely much different than any of the other FSG cigars released before. So it's an interesting project, and one we put a lot of time and effort in. I think the sad part is if it's successful, I'm at least 2.5 years away from being able to make more than what because in the end, I got more than 330 pounds. I think I ended up with 330 workable pounds that ended up actually getting delivered to Hoya in the end, because we burned some up in the Polone, all the test. We burned some tobacco up in all the blends, that we were making. But the problem is the 330 pounds, rough estimate off the top of my head, that's maybe enough to make 15 to 17,000 cigars roughly in the size we're making. So if I have to make more than those 15 to 17,000, I'm a good 2.5 years away from the point that we pick up select more tobacco. So it's kind of a weird project. It's kind of a project that's got an expiration on it in a weird way.
I know this was Steve's project one, but did you have a chance to play around with it at all? Like, what were some of your thoughts of it? Because it's more unique than anything you've probably been able to bring.
Yeah, no, we follow Steve's lineup in that one because we didn't have much experience on working on that, and we didn't want to screw those 300 pounds. So we just followed Steve's process in this one. It's an interesting blend. I smoked it recently, actually, about 4 weeks ago. It's quite interesting. It's nicer than other FSGs that I'd smoked before. So I hope that people like it too, man.
Yeah, me too. Look, again, I think though, if you smoke it, you're going to be like, okay, this is still FSG. I hope. The easier thing to do is to not use any of the FSG tobacco, just make something that I like and wave a magic wand over it and say, oh, it's got FSG in it, right? And who's going to know the difference, right? But that seems like it's just too dishonest even for me. So
Even for you.
even for me.
All right, we've got some more topics to cover with these two gentlemen, but we're gonna go into our first fun segment of the night, which is always brought to you by United Cigars. It's our presidential trivia segment, which is brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana and distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, the Firecracker, and the highly acclaimed Atabey, Byron, and now Alfonso lines from Selected Tobacco. Smoke one today and start living united. While Steve figures out something with his video here in just a second, we'll kind of kick things off here. So, Juan, I do a presidential trivia segment each week. Don't worry. This case, I've got 2 true or false questions. I usually do multiple choice, but I try to curve it to the guests in some way or form or fashion. But I thought this would be kind of fun. Juan is the Spanish version of the name, the English version name of John. So here's a president we haven't talked about quite a bit in this segment. So I decided to pick our second president of the United States, which was John Adams. So some fun facts about John Adams. So it's very easy, guys. 2 true or false questions. So true or false, did John Adams defend British soldiers after the Boston Massacre? True or false?
Oof, you got me, man. I have zero knowledge of presidential history, but I'll go with a true there.
Okay. Steve?
Yeah, he definitely defended him. It was he was a lawyer, if I remember right, and as a lawyer, he ended up defending like a group of British soldiers, because they killed like 5 Bostonians, I think.
Yeah, that's you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, in March 1770, the Boston Massacre, 5 colonists were killed, and Adams actually volunteered. He was a lawyer by trade. He actually volunteered to represent the 9 British soldiers that were charged with manslaughter to ensure that they received a fair trial. So
they were convicted, by the way. He failed.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, for the most part. Probably much to his delight, because he ended up
I'm sure
joining the Sons of Liberty later on. Yeah. So, but they did avoid prison sentence, which was, they might have 2 of them were convicted, but they were branded on their thumbs. That was their punishment. Fun fact. So, okay. All right. So next, true or false question about John Adams, our second president. True or false? He originally wanted the newly formed office of the President of the United States, so the person who held the office of President of the United States, to be addressed as Your Highness rather than Mr. President.
I would go with the false on that one. Wouldn't make sense to do that after all the fighting and all the struggle to get rid of that subjugation.
If I remember, again, this is American. Look, I live in New England, right? So this is kind of our shtick, right? So I think he had a whole bunch of like things. He had like His Mightiness, I think, His Highness, something like elective majesty. Mm-hmm. He had a really weird one, protector of liberty, I think. He had a bunch of titles he suggested.
Yeah, right. This one's actually true, Juan. Yeah, he actually did suggest His Highness as the name. Steve mentioned a couple other, His Majesty the President, or His Highness the President of the United States. The Protector of the Rights of the Same was the one that you were talking about there, Steve. But yeah, too many Americans thought this reminded them, to Juan's point, reminded them of the monarch. So like, hey, they just spent years of infighting, and then they're gonna go back to calling the president His Highness and stuff. So my favorite part of this story is that opponents of Adams and all of his crazy names was they actually they suggested a name for him, which was his rotundinate, which is a comment on his weight, which is funny. So. So curious, Juan, the leader of Nicaragua, do they address him as Mr. President, or like how do they address the head of the country of Nicaragua? Do you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. The current one is either comandante or compañero, which comandante is his title from the revolution back in the 70s, and compañero is like comrade. They still refer, and not only like they refer to the president in the same way they refer to most of other let's say party members or government officials, which is compañero. Everybody treats themselves like compañero, compañera, comrades.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool. Fun facts here. Well, that was our presidential trivia segment, which was brought to you by United Cigars. We featuring La Giana Havana and distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabey, Byron, and now Alfonso lines from Selected Tobacco. Smoke one today and start living united. Each week we try to do a charity segment here on the show, and as part of my birthday celebration, I'm doing a month-long charity for Canines for Warriors. As a lot of my audience knows, I lost my father this past summer, and he was a proud veteran of this of our country, just like Steve, and he was also a wonderful dog lover, and I've been a huge advocate for this organization for years. But upon his death, we asked for proceeds to be donated to Canines for Warriors, and a lot of folks donated to that great organization. So for the next month, I'm raising money for it again because I believe in it. I think it's a great organization that does great things for our nation's veterans. So you can check out caninesforveterans.org. I'll have a link to it in the show notes. You can check it out. But it's a great organization. So
Awesome, man.
But to get back to you guys, I thought this was an interesting two last kind of questions on this before we get into some more fun segments. I thought this was an interesting commentary, just because Steve, you're building a brand, over the last 10 years, and you've done a lot of amazing marketing around these brands that you've created. And Juan, you guys have recently done a rebranding of a lot of the more infamous brands from Joya de Nicaragua, like you said, going more towards the jewel rather than the famed tobacco leaves that are on your shirt there and things like that. So I thought these, while they're different, they have similarities and challenges. So, Steve, I know, even throughout your career, you've done both. You've built brand, done branding, and then you've done rebranding. What would you say is probably the more challenging of the two?
I think rebranding is much harder than initial branding, because rebranding you have a lot of concerns about. I mean, you already have an existing product, and normally you're doing a rebranding because the product, for whatever reason, isn't particularly doing well under its current brand. But even if it's not doing well, it's doing some sales. There's probably some reason for it to still. The reason why you're willing to rebrand is because you still have faith in the product. So I think a rebrand is a much more difficult task than an initial brand. Now, doing an initial brand correctly from the beginning, that's another issue. I mean, many people do a lot of branding that's pretty piss poor as far as I'm concerned, but that's my personal opinion. But I think a rebrand is much more challenging than an initial brand, personally.
Yeah, how is some of your rebranding is a little bit different, Juan. You guys are not rebranding necessarily. In some ways, you are rebranding the look, but you're also kind of rebranding the direction of the story. You're continuing the story, but in a different way. You guys started, as you mentioned, when you started in the business over 10 years ago, kind of telling the story about Joya de Nicaragua being the oldest factory in Nicaragua and how it's stood the test of time. But now you're telling the story not only of Joya de Nicaragua, but the story of Nicaragua with your rebrand. So that's a really unique direction as well. How does that differ from some of the brands that you guys have built from scratch?
Well, I agree with Steve that rebranding is harder, more challenging on one sense, because you're always afraid that why fix it if it ain't broken, right? But ultimately, our belief, and this is more of a personal belief that we have as a family, as a company, is that brands and companies, organizations are like human beings, are dynamic over time. We grow, we evolve, we make mistakes, we learn from our mistakes, and we try to be better. I think there are two dimensions when you go on an effort to rebrand yourself. One, it's because you respond also to your consumers. Consumers are evolving. You have new consumers, you have more competition, so you need to adapt yourself to the reality of the people who you are speaking to, the people who you're engaging. The consumers that we have today are not the same consumers that we had necessarily, the same consumers that we had 30, 40 years ago. and even if they are the same, they too have evolved. Their taste profiles have evolved. The way they interact with the brands has evolved. The way you communicate, the way you fall in love with the brands as entities has also evolved. So in a way, for us, a rebranding is more as an adaptation to the times, moving together with our consumers. And the other part is that we are not only responding to the evolution of our consumers who we owe ourselves to, but also we are evolving for ourselves because the company grows, the people come, people go. We grow as human beings, we grow as professionals, we grow as citizens. We are exposed to new traditions or to new ways of doing business, the new ways of flavoring life, enjoying life with so many things that we, in a way, are encouraged to evolve as individuals. Ultimately, the brand is nothing else than the reflection of the individuals, the groups, the collective that is behind that brand. So as we evolve as a collective, we expect our brand also to evolve, not to be static over time. Obviously, keep the core elements alive, the values, the principles that brought you to this, the beginning should be respected, but the look and feel, the way you message people, the way you respond to people, the way you present the packaging, your communication, like what we do today, what Steve does today, and what we do today, spend so much time directly with consumer, while 35 years ago, when my father was doing this directly, he had almost zero connection with the consumer because he was based in Nicaragua. There was no social media. There was no email was starting up. And he had actually no exposure to the market beyond what he got from his importers, distributors back then, which was very, very limited too, because not even them as distributors had the contact with the consumers. But nowadays, we have it, we're doing this. We have people commenting on the chat. We're going to go after this to social media, Instagram, Facebook, and we have that privilege of being connected, and we understand them better. We understand their pain points better. We understand their needs, their desires better than what we did in the past. So we owe ourselves the learning experience. And as Steve said, when you bring something new, you make a lot of mistakes. You make a lot of mistakes that you want to improve over time. Maybe not all of it all the time at once, but over time, you're going to grow. Your brand is going to grow. Your presentation is going to look nicer. And the reality is that in such a competitive landscape, you need to adapt too. Otherwise, the companies, the brands that have the privilege of not having to change are very, very few. So that's sort of our philosophy behind. We don't call it rebranding. We call it more of an evolution, of an adaptation to the new times. And I think in order to continue being relevant, to continue being present, we need to do that. Interestingly, around the world, the amount of new smokers, people who had not smoked a cigar before, let's say 5 years ago, is tremendous. Like the proportion of people, of new smokers of different ages that have come in line today is enormous. So that forces us to say, so how are we going to talk to this new generation of consumers who are used to different products, to different experiences, and are not used to a static, very old school classic product like ours? Mm-hmm. Because in the end, there's so much that we can do with the product itself. There's no such thing as innovation in cigars, in the sense of how many ways can you process the tobacco? How many ways can you add or change a process in the tobacco and cigar making? There's very little. The way we make the cigars today is very similar or almost identical to how we did it 50 years ago. Obviously, with a lot of tweaks and improvements, but essentially it's the same. Overall, it's a very static industry compared to what people are used to, right? The technology, even other consumer goods, in liquor business, in wines, in any other industry that you can think about. People evolve very, very quickly, and we should not be exempt from that evolution too. And that's our philosophy.
Well, like the Ultimate Jewel collection, I thought was a really terrific way of introducing the new branding, but giving people again a variety of what the company's all about and has been, right? Like you talked about, like a lot of, like these blends haven't changed, the way that they've been made and the tobacco's used and stuff hasn't changed necessarily. So I thought
But
that
actually, the jewel collection was not only to showcase the branding part, but also to showcase that evolution in our profile, in our portfolio, right? From the very first cigar, like the Classico, which was the old school, the cigar of the White House, so on and so forth, to our newest release. So you can, in one take, you can have the whole movie from the beginning to our current situation with a cigar that showcases that evolution in its own way from all of our families, and that was the idea.
so one mentioned, this is all about growth, and he mentioned the word mistake, Steve. And so I know that I know the tremendous confidence that you have in your abilities for marketing and as well as cigar making, obviously, but you also have a great deal of humility as well. Do you feel like you've ever made to use his word, made a mistake in building a brand or
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously, Todos Los Dias was poorly done. In my defense, that was during the summer of all the FDA regulation. Todos Los Dias did not get the focus that it deserved. I mean, the brand name was weak, the packaging was weak, the blend was very good, but the cigar was much better than the presentation of the product. I think had I launched it in its second release packaging, it would have fared a lot better than it did out of the initial gate. I think that idea was a bit half-baked, just the whole design concept. But we were in that crazy, they announced on whatever, May 1st that we had to have everything done by August 8th. That kind of put a lot of pressure. So, that brand just kind of got pushed to the side. I think Stillwell Star at some point is going to need a major rework. There's parts of the Stillwell Star brand that work really, really well, and there's other parts of the brand that don't work particularly well. So at some point, I will go back and I will fix Stillwell Star to retain the parts that are working well, and I will cut out the stuff that isn't working well. Because look, it's in the end, I mean, it's our obligation to give to the consumers what they actually want, because that's what our retail partners want. They want cigars that turn. So I don't like to keep placeholder products in existence. I've always been the person that I don't like it when you see a company all of a sudden say, we're going to discontinue 40 SKUs, we're going to discontinue 80 SKUs, we're going to discontinue 120 SKUs. I think when you're looking at a portfolio and you're looking at a brand, it's something that you should just be pruning and adding to as you're going on all the time. I don't think you should wait until you get forced to do it. I think you need to be proactive about it and make these tweaks and make these changes. And yeah, like we just announced, we're going to get rid of one of our most popular Mi Queridas. Mi Querida Muy Gordo Grande is a very big seller. Okay. But I know that it's, the 6x56 format. It's close to the 52. It's not quite a Gordo, so it doesn't really satisfy the Gordo consumer. It's not a big enough differentiator from the 52, the 56. I know that it kind of just doesn't have a place, even though, and when I say big seller, it's not a crazy big seller, but we're good for 300 to 400 boxes of it every month. And Juan will tell you that's a very respectable number, right? To have one single SKU in a brand that you can just pretty much click along at 300 to 400 boxes consistently all the time. But I know that it isn't quite right. I know that actually it's in better interest of the brand that it not be a 6x56. And look, I would have made it a 6x60 to begin with, but I didn't like the 60 ring gauge blends. They just never suited my palate. The 60s just kind of fell flat. So I ultimately ended up going with a 56 from the point of product. The product was better in 56 than it was in 60. Now, subsequent to that, I ended up making 64 ring gauge Mi Queridas, and those do incredibly well. The blend, they do well in sales, but the blend works well at a 64 ring gauge. I find it just to be a much more palatable blend. So the logical thing to do is to actually put a proper Gordo in the portfolio, because here we have a brand that continues to grow, and yet we have this one little odd, quirky size. And I know that it'll be better for my consumer base. Not the guys who are smoking my Fino Largos and the number 648s. I understand that, but those aren't going away. So those consumers are going to still have the formats that they enjoy. But to reach a different consumer, because we have a lot of consumers that smoke the Tricky Traca 764 and the Mi Cape Rita Grand Buffalo. But one of the common comments I get is they just wish it wasn't so long, that it didn't take them so long to smoke it, because the 7-inch link just makes it just too long a duration. So I know from the feedback from the customers that they would rather there be a shorter Gordo. So that's going to be something that, even though it's selling, I've just decided that I'm going to nix it. In Sobremesa, one of my favorite blends is the Cervantes Fino. It's always been. Now, Cervantes Fino was always one of the slower selling sizes of Sobremesa, but it was still one of my very favorite blends. So we take the Cervantes Fino and adjust the blend, tweak it, make it a little bit richer, a little bit stronger, kind of doing the same pattern that we did with Sobremesa to Sobremesa Blue. And now we'll make a Sobremesa Salida Red. So I get to keep my beloved Cervantes Fino, blend a little bit tweaked, a little bit different, give it a little bit of differentiation in the packaging from an identifier point of view. And I think that cigar will do better for our retailers if it's actually carved out in a way that makes it a little bit more of a focal, a standout point, and that the overall Sobremesa Salida product will benefit from there being a Sobremesa Salida Red. So there's a tweak, you know what I mean? So you're always constantly looking at these things and going, hey, how can I do this better? How can I make it work better for my purveyors? How can I satisfy my consumers? So it's a constant give and take.
Mm-hmm. So the next topic I wanted to jump into is partnerships. And you guys have talked a little bit about it along the way. And obviously, Steve, you partner with a couple of different factories, and Joya de Nicaragua being one of them. Juan, you guys partner with Steve, and you make cigars for other folks as well. But you also have a very strong partnership with Drew Estate, but that's a whole other dynamic of the business. Partnerships are a really unique thing in this business, and there's some that do really well, like some of the ones we just named, and then there's some that are miserable failures. Why are they so challenging? That may seem like a really obvious question, but I really wanted to get your two perspectives on this.
Let me start with this one. You can't be in the cigar business and not be in partnerships. You are so dependent on so many parties in our industry, right? Because look, even a simple product, you look at a brand like Sobremesa. If you look at Sobremesa and you actually take all the individual components, there's 18 different vendors involved before it ends up actually getting delivered to you as the customer, right? So partnerships are an unavoidable thing. You always have partnerships. I think where partnerships fall apart is when you are directly financially eating out of the same bucket. I think it becomes much more difficult when you're actually financially business partners versus being partners in a way that you do things cooperatively, because it's in each of the individual's company's best interest to do it. And I know that seems like a very kind of a gray area, but if you really think about it, the true business partnerships where your money's my money and my money's your money, that gets to be very tenuous and very difficult. And, then you got to eat the other partner's failures. You got to eat the other partner's successes. Everybody has different perspectives on how to do things. I think that's a very difficult thing to do compared to a kind of a partnership relationship where you have with so many of your people that you work with, where as I do well, they do well. You know what I mean? It's much, much different. I think that's where, for me, the dividing line is. I don't want I don't want anybody in my bank account. I don't want anybody making my decisions for me. I don't want to have to do that. But at the same time, I am also not foolish. I have to have good partners.
Yeah.
You can't survive without good partners in our industry.
I agree, and not only that, this is a relationship business in all sense, as Steve said, not only with your suppliers, with your customers, with the retail partners, even with the consumers, the groups, the clubs, the media. It's a partnership all around. We do not work in bubbles. We don't work isolated. But aside from the financial perspective that Steve mentioned, I also think that there's the human component, right? Personalities need to be aligned, values need to be aligned. That doesn't mean that we need to think alike or think identical, but at least be aligned. Every good relationship, at least in our experience, has to have a solid base. And that base is laid upon the values, the work ethics, the respect that we have as partners. And we are in this together, and we have a role to play. We are clear what our responsibilities are, but sometimes, unfortunately, personalities get in the way, and ego sometimes get in the way and mess things up. So as long as you have a clear line in what each one's role is, and that we are in this together, because together we're better than individually, and that makes sense for both parties, and you're able to talk and to discuss. For example, with Steve, one of the greatest things that we appreciate with Steve is his open transparency and candidness. Every time we messed up, that we do a lot, he gets on the phone and he bashes the ball, but he's humane about it. He understands where we come from or what the challenge might have been, and we're able to resolve it because we both understand that it's in the best interest of the group, of the collective, or of the collaboration, that we work together to solve and to improve and to be better. But once you get, the personalities involved and the ego, and I'm bigger than you and you're smaller than me, and then, then it gets mumbled up and it doesn't work. And if you go back to the history book, and you said there's been a lot of mishaps in collaborations, I think personality played a big role, personality and the relationship of the people. If you're just doing a collaboration for the sake of the collaboration, just for putting the two names on the sheet, probably won't work. But if you're doing a collaboration out of the pure, honest intention of that you need each other and that you support each other and that you're gonna be better together, then that has a higher likelihood of success than if you're just doing it for pure marketing purposes, man. And that's my opinion. That's the relationships that we try to build over time, not only with our brand partners, but also with our distributors, with our competitors too. We see each other. We're together more often than with most of our own families. When we go to events, with trade shows and travels. And we have to get along. We have to get along, and you have to choose your partners wisely.
Was it challenging at all? This kind of a little bit of a murky question. So if there's anything you can't answer, obviously it's worked out because the relationship between you all and Steve exists, and the relationship between you and Drew Estate still exists. Was that difficult at all, or was that an easy decision for all parties involved when Steve says, "Hey, I'm launching my own brand and I want to partner"? Or I don't know how that necessarily came about, but when that first dynamic came to be, was there any challenge because of parties involved or anything like that? Obviously, it worked out, but was it challenging in the beginning?
Well, the reason why Steve and Joya work together is not just because Drew Estate, we had a relationship before. It was primarily because Steve developed a strong and deep relationship with first my father and the family, and the company by extension, right? So Steve and my father spent countless hours of driving and countless days together traveling around the United States. Pure misery for both parties, I would say. They spent a lot of time together and developed a relationship first, a personal relationship first. So it never was an issue. To be honest, for our side, it never came up it was more of a concern for us and Steve than for what it was for Drew Estate. It never came up at the higher level when we were working together, and it hasn't come up because we are not in the same ballgame. Where Steve works in a different segment, even though his cigars are different. We're not crossing any frontiers, and we were open from the beginning. Hey, we're gonna do this because
I think an area that would have made it more difficult is if I tried to trade off Drew Estate to be the identity of my company. I think that would have made it much more difficult. In other words, I've always been respectful of Drew Estate, and I've always been respectful of their products. And I think that that makes a big difference too. I think had I been more hey, I'm the guy that created Liga Privada, blah, 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 blah. And had I beat that drum, I think that would have been an issue for Drew Estate. And that would have then put Hoy in the difficult position of saying, I've got this really big partner, Drew Estate, and I've got this like little tiny partner, Steve Saka. And in the end, Hoya would have to dump Steve Saka, and I would completely understand why, because that would be the only thing that would be the right thing to do. So I also think it's how you don't just interact with the partner that you're directly interacting with, but it's also how you interact with their other partners too, right?
Yeah.
Because look, there are a lot of people. Everybody is somehow relying on other people for various things. If I had a really terrible relationship with the Perezes, that would not have been good for Joya de Nicaragua because they buy a lot of tobacco from the Perez family, right? And if David Perez absolutely hated my guts for whatever reason, then that then becomes a pain point. Nobody needs pain points, right? We have enough challenges in our business already without those being an issue, right? So I think so that has a lot to do with it too. It's not just how you get along, but do you get along, or even if you're not besties of friends, but you have a general sense of admiration and respect. You know what I mean? I know I can be very blusterous at times, but in the end, I am very deferential to other people that I feel deserve having deference. And I don't go out of my way to like badger or beat up on people that I don't even think do. Like I have a very bad relationship with Cigar Aficionado. Joya de Nicaragua has a very good relationship with Joya de Nicaragua. And I'm just saying that as an outsider. You know what I mean? But I don't want my bad relationship with them to become a problem for these guys. Why should they be dragged into my situation? So part of it's always this way. I think it's just
and I tie it together with your previous question. Drew Estate has added so much value to our company, not in the distribution sense, but in the way we've grown, we've prospered, and we've matured as a company from Steve's time that he taught us so much. Remember, especially for the United States, these guys are our eyes, our ears, our heart there. Since 2007, we've learned so much. We continue to learn every day and appreciate a lot of the lessons that they provide us. But we also are better today thanks to Steve in this new era, this new chapter in Dunbarton Tobacco. A lot of the things that we do better are thanks to Steve's lessons, to Steve's teachings, to Steve's experience that he transmits to us. So we appreciate the value that our partners give us. Not only what we give them, but also what they give to us. And for us, working with these guys, with Drew and with Steve, has been a great gift. And we appreciate that. And we value and we respect that. And we're very transparent. We're very transparent. There's so much that we learn every day, every week that Steve comes down to the factory and spends a couple of days with us. And, you guys need to do this better, or you guys are doing this well, or you guys are, we take that to heart. And we appreciate that. Even with all of the background that we might have, we are very humble in that sense. And I think that humbleness helps not only to have a good partnership, but also to make it better going forward.
You mentioned something earlier, Juan, about talking about working on different planes, and there's a lot there's significant difference in the way that Joya de Nicaragua does business and in the way that Steve does business. And size has a lot to do with that, right? And capacity and things of that nature. But um, a question that I wanted to know is um, we do as manufacturers, both y'all compete over the same shelf space. And but that's again one of the things I love about this business. There's competition, but it's not competition at the same time. And
Yeah,
that's
but
what I
it's
get.
always been that case. It's never
Yeah.
going to end, right? And here's the funny part. If I'm getting space on the shelf and these are Hoya made products, then that's good for Hoya de Nicaragua.
Right. Yeah, exactly my point. So my question is, so again, a little bit
And the
more.
better recognized Hoya becomes, the better it is for me as a company too,
Right.
because they're my factory of choice. So them doing well is good for me, and me doing well is good for them. So we have
Yes.
very mutually aligned things. There's no benefit to me doing better than them. Okay. I mean, other than making my bank account better. But I mean, in the end, we're tied at the hip. You are with all of your partners.
Well, taking the finances out of it. So when Steve, you've won numerous awards. Juan Jorge de Nicaragua's won numerous awards. Like, is there a
They've won
source
way more prestigious awards than I have.
is there a source of pride though when you see that? Like when you see like that Juan and Jorge de Nicaragua have achieved another milestone or have garnered a prestigious award, as you say. Is there a source of pride for you? Do you feel really proud that you're a part of that? Or is it, or does it motivate you in a different way? And the same question to Juan too, vice versa.
Well, of course, I feel pride in it. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Why wouldn't I? Look, in the end, I mean, we're in business together, but we're also friends. And who doesn't want to see their friends do well? I mean, there's no benefit to that at all. I mean, look, there are so many people to compete with. And I've always said this from the beginning, because this is always a question with some consumers. There's a few consumers. I think it's getting less and less, but there's this kind of mindset that, oh, is Nicholas doing better or is Dunbarton doing better? And that to me is such a non-issue because I've always said that I don't want to take from Nicholas's plate. That's not whose food I'm looking to take. I want to get people from smoking these very big corporate brands, these legacy corporate brands that have, in my opinion, become somewhat soulless. I want to take their money. Those are the people whose shelf space I ultimately want to grab. Those are the consumers I want. Look, and let's not kid ourselves. It's a competition, right? I mean, there is only so many cigars sold each year. The business grows, but it's not like an ever expanding pie. There's only so many cigar smokers out there. So if one company is doing well, it does mean some other company isn't doing as well. That is kind of the way our industry has always been.
Sure.
But at the same time, we're all competing on an even playing field for the most part, right? I
Okay.
mean, we are all dealing with the same tobacco growers. We're all dealing with a relatively similar product. We're all dealing with the same retailers and purveyors. We're all dealing with the same consumers. It isn't like somebody has an unfair competitive advantage. Now, yes, there are competitive advantages depending on what your scale is, but there's also competitive advantages in being small, right? Being the outsider, being the small company, being the underdog is also a bit of a competitive
Having
advantage
soul,
too. Huh?
having soul, to use your terminology.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that but no, there's no doubt that when your partners do well, you're doing well. Okay. And the other thing too is like, even when they're not your partner, it doesn't help when you're a small company like us for all other small brands to not do well, because that makes retailers and purveyors less likely to give you shelf space for your product. Because if their general consensus is, well, anytime we bring in something that isn't from one of the big corporate brands, it always fails, then that doesn't help me at all. What you're hoping that retailers are going to say, you know what, there are people in this segment on the mid-sized, small-sized companies that they can earn their spot in my humidor. There is a place for them. So if everybody else fails, it hurts you also. So you need that kind of level of healthy competition. It's better for a company like me.
For us, when Steve gets the recognition, it's even better than when we get it because we know that he's gonna be happy. And for anybody that knows Steve, they know that if Steve is happy, we'll get a little bit more love than so it's better. But Steve's point, you know, I personally get excited when any of my friends gets a great recognition, man. Anytime Nestor Plasencia or Liva or anybody that is a good friend of ours, they get a good recognition. I pick up the phone or send them a message, man. Excited because I do get excited that their work, that's also a reflection of our collective work, gets recognized. So this is, and I like Steve's phrase of healthy competition because even though it's a very tough competition, in the end, if you manage it in a healthy way, it's good for your business and it's also good for everybody else's business. So it's an interesting way because it's not common in most industries, in most businesses, that you have this sort of camaraderie between brands, not only brands that are made at the same house, but also brands that compete with each other.
Part of it, though, is an extension of just cigar culture, right?
Right.
Handmade cigars are naturally something that brings people together, right? So we're in an industry that the product that we make is a product that is typically smoked in celebration, smoked with friends, smoked with family, right? So the nature of the product that we manufacture and try to sell, it's kind of a key component to it. So if that isn't the case, how you actually interact with your competitors, then you're not even really being true to what a whole handmade cigar is about. And that's why I use the term soulless, because I don't have those interactions, with those companies. It's so much different. It's become very foreign to me. Whereas even in the past, when you had these large companies, there was some family at the top. It was employee owned. There were people that were there for 30, 40 years. It was much, much different than it's become today. We really have become almost two different industries in a way. And you really kind of saw that split when we got into the ugliness of the whole FDA, right? And that's kind of where you kind of saw the people that were on this side and the people that were on that side. And it looks like we're starting to finally come back together to a degree in a better way. And it wasn't like, and it's not with everybody in the company. You still have people that operate in these other companies that you have nothing but mutual respect for, but it is a little different, There is a difference between when you look at a company like Placencia or Fuente or Padron, you know what I mean, versus somebody that is you're looking at like an STG or an Altadis in their current configuration.
Right.
Doesn't mean that what they're doing isn't worthy. Doesn't mean that what they're doing is not, not good. But you don't have that same personal connection that you used to have with those companies just because of how they're owned and operated today.
Right. No, that makes all the sense. So that's going to lead us into some of our fun segments that kind of concludes everything. Some of the questions I had for you, but we're going to go into some fun segments for the rest of the evening. And we're going to kick things off with, of course, Steve's segment, which is the Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust curveball segment. So fastballs or curveballs, doesn't matter. Since the company's inception, Steve Saka has been knocking them out of the park. 9 consecutive years in the consensus top 3. Congratulations to our good friend, Mr. Steve Saka.
I think this will be the year I won't be.
Sure, Steve, whatever you say. All right, so I got a challenge for you guys. Do both of you guys have your phones handy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You gotta pull up the notes section. You're gonna make a note after you learn the question here. Okay, so here's the curveball segment. So I want you to guess what the cigar in your current portfolio. So Juan, this is a Joya de Nicaragua cigar that that is Steve's favorite. And Steve, I want you to write down a Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust cigar that is Juan's favorite. So you're guessing each other's favorite cigars from each other's portfolio. So I want you to Write that down in your note section, and we're gonna guess. So I'll give you guys a
I'm
couple of
guessing
seconds.
the one that Juan likes the best in my collection.
Correct.
I'm gonna screw this up.
And Juan, you're gonna do the same. So write it down on your notes. A little. I do appreciate the honor system, but I thought this would be a fun exercise. So
But yet you're making us put it in here.
Yeah.
I'm cheating. I'm putting 2.
That's fine. Juan, you got yours down?
I do.
All right. Perfect. All right. So, Steve, we'll start with you. What is your favorite cigar in the Joya de Nicaragua portfolio?
Cuatro Cinco.
Would you write down? What'd you write down, Juan? The Antonio?
1970, yeah.
Let me say that would have been my second one.
Yeah.
What do you like about the Cuatro Cinco, Steve? How does it speak to your
I
palate?
like the balance of it. I like the smoothness of it. I like how it's rich, but yet it's tempered. It's just got a really good, it's just a really nice, clean blend. It's a cigar I find very relaxing to smoke.
Awesome. All right. All right. Juan, your turn. What is your favorite cigar in Steve's portfolio?
Oof. Can it be? Well, it had to be 2 because one is no longer produced. But the regular one is the Sobremesa Brule Blue.
Great cigar. It's on my top 10 a couple years ago.
I don't know if that'll show up.
What do you got?
The Brule Blue, yeah.
Blue. Nice guess. Awesome. What's the one that's not produced anymore? Is it the Todos los Dias? Or
No,
what?
it was a muestra Saka. It was the Nacatamale actually that I mentioned before.
No, we make the Nakatamale.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
You make the Nakatamale almost every month. What?
I make it. I thought that. Yeah. I have a couple of boxes of those because I thought there was gonna be a limited one of those muestra Saka ones.
Yeah. No.
He keeps doing. He keeps making them. So
Yeah, I keep making them. I won't. Nakatamale will be a hard one for me to stop because it's my favorite one of the Western personally.
What is it about the Brule Blue that you like so much, Juan?
well, I'm actually I've gravitated more so milder medium cigars lately, and I like first the format, the size of the Brule Blue is the one that I like, and then the I don't know, is the richness of flavor that it has and the sweetness to it is it's uncomparable. I wish we could have that cigar in our own portfolio.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love that cigar. It's fantastic. All right. Well, that was our Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust curveball segment. Thanks, gentlemen, for participating in that. We're having a little fun. So this next segment is brought to you by our Artista Cigars, which is truly the last hidden gem of the Dominican Republic. With nearly 70 years of rolling cigars, the family behind Artista believes in honoring their long-held traditions of handmade artistry. Artista's blends include factory exclusives and front marks for every budget. In fact, Artista has one of the most varied portfolios on the market. There's something for everyone at Artista Cigars. Now, if you're like me and you can never decide, Artista Cigars is a breath of fresh air because I can literally take something from any of the boxes of Artista, and I know that I'm going to be smoking something truly special. So this is a rapid fire segment, gentlemen. It's pretty easy. I'm going to present you with 2 things, and you just pick one. So it's pretty easy and straightforward. So because it's my birthday episode, which do you guys prefer, cake or pie?
Cake.
I'm pie.
What kind of pie, Steve?
Apple. I'm boring. Apple or blueberry.
True New Englander, man. That's good stuff. That's great. Classics never die, man. How about cake? What kind of cake, Juan?
The typical what we have here is a cake that's made with guava jelly in the center. So it has a bit of fruit in it, but it's not actually fruit because it's jelly. That's our typical Nicaraguan cake, and I love it, man.
Oh, that's
It's
fantastic.
just a typical cake.
Sounds delicious.
We don't have a long pie history
I
here.
would say pies are not a Nicaraguan thing, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some fruit-based empanadas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but pie is not a
They don't
Nicaraguan.
count as a pie, no.
Yeah.
That's the next moisture to Saka is the Nicaraguan cake, right? You're gonna have it.
You know what's funny? I haven't even really decided what's going to be the next Moestra. The
There you
last
go.
one was so painful. So
You're talking about Krakatoa?
yeah, Krakatoa took forever. So I've not been charging into the next Moestra project. I don't think there probably won't be another Moestra until 2026. The problem with Moestra, then what am I going to kill?
Right.
You
That's
know,
what you
because
always
that's
talk
the
about.
problem, because you add a Moestra, the brand is already so big. You know, which Moestra do you cease making is the challenge.
Well, I know if it was your choice, you would get rid of the Lancero, right?
I already did. Lancero, we stopped. I mean, so the Lancero, the only way you gal get the Nelly Mail alone is in this little the GFY collection that we're just shipping out now. So, I mean, that was the one that ended up having to eat dirt so that there was space for Krakatoa.
So let me ask you, Steve, what is the elegant response to the G?
Good for you.
Good for you.
Good for you. That's right.
You know,
All
I
right.
had to have an elegant response to
Yeah,
it.
There you go.
someone asked me and I had forgotten about it, so that's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, the good for you. I'm glad they're finally making their way out there, because I'm really interested to start getting the feedback on all those different Lanceros. It's a lot. And I gotta tell you, there is no factory better at making Lanceros than Hoya. There really isn't. You guys,
People don't imagine the complexity of that project.
you guys are
Yeah.
so good at making Lanceros. I don't think there's anyone even remotely as good at making Lanceros as you guys are.
Well,
Thank you, man.
that cabinetta was marvelous that I started the evening with. That was great.
Just,
So
just the level of construction is just so impeccable. I mean, it really is. It's pretty good. And I mean, you have just really basically two pairs that make all the Lanceros in the factory. So I mean, you basically look. We say there's four people working on it, but you know as well as I do, Juan, there's really two people, right? Because the
Yeah.
Boncheros are the only ones that really matter when it
Yeah.
comes to that. But yeah, I mean, those two guys, man, they're just really good at making Lanceros.
So this particular project, the GFY, is probably one of the most complex projects that we've
And we're
worked on.
already running into a few problems where I've already seen one box that has two number 8s in it.
Oh,
Yeah, it's gonna be hopefully there won't be a lot. We'll take care of them as they roll. But look, it was a tough project. You got 10 different blends
and
all
different
in one box. They all Lanceros of the exact same size. I mean, yeah, it was a challenging project. And then let me say, separate of Hoya being the best at making Lanceros, there would be nobody else that could have executed that project, really. I mean, I think the only time I've ever seen it done in the past was I think Pete did a series of Skinny Monsters,
mhm.
right? So Pete did that, but it's a real challenge when you just think about the logistics and the operations involved in making so many different blends, Lanceros, keeping track of them all, making sure they all get packaged correctly. It's a pretty tough ask.
But just a shameless money grab, though, Steve. Right? Just a
Shameless money grab.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
whatever, man. Whatever. All right, let's turn our attention towards tobacco. Esteli or Condenga, just by itself.
Well, that's the lead. That's not even a question.
Same one.
Yeah, silly.
Esteli. All right.
Yeah.
Outside of the country of Nicaragua, let's go again. Just this is blanket statement. So
Filler or wrapper?
no, this is blanket statement. Dominican tobacco or Honduran tobacco. Doesn't matter. Wrapper, binder, filler, doesn't matter. Just as a general whole.
I'm going Dominican.
Me too, Dominican. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's certain things that stand out in Honduras. I mean, you've got some of that crops that the Aroas grow and the Corolla that's pretty interesting. You've got Placencia growing certain things. I mean, I have a particular Honduran tobacco that we use in Mi Querida Black that I think is special. But if you're like looking as just a blanket statement, I think that you have far more interesting, diverse, and coming out of the Dominican Republic than you do coming out of Honduras. And also with Honduras, so much of the Honduran tobacco is really just the same as Jalapa tobacco, right? Because you're really just talking about where's the border,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, it's kind of
Soil is very similar.
yeah, it's very, I mean,
Otherwise, it's basically the same.
yeah.
It's not as contrast to like say something like
Right.
Pueblo
So
Nuevo
like
or Ometepe or
right. I
something.
mean, like I said, you look at some of the stuff the Aroas do, that's kind of a standout, right? But a lot of, I mean, what Nestor grows in Honduras is not significantly different than what he's growing in Jalapa. With exceptions, he has certain things, but for the most part, a lot of it's very, very similar in a lot of ways. So
Okay. Box press, which I'll include soft press all the way down to chunk press. So a box pressed cigar or a traditional parejo.
I'll let Juan go first.
Oof. I will go with parejo, traditional parejo.
Yeah, so would I.
Okay. All right, so these are getting into some fun ones here. Would you rather
Hold on a second.
yeah,
I mean, so when you start getting into the trunk pressing, it depends on the dilemma that you have with the trunk pressing is that it affects the way the cigars taste, right? The pressing does.
sure.
And depending on how severely you're going to press them, it also affects how you're going to actually bunch them. And I think that, that's why I tend to favor soft presses instead of firm presses. I mean, I think right now I have what? One firm press of the entire portfolio. I think it's in Sin Compromiso Paladin de Saka is the only one that I have kind of a firm press on. Because when you start getting into the firm press, it kind of changes the way the Bonchero actually operates at the table. You almost have to like intentionally underfill the cigar in order to make the press work, or a lot of times when you have to underfill that much, they underfill to the point that most like really strong trunk presses, I find most of those cigars to be a little too spongy and a little too airy, and they burn a little bit too hot, and they end up being a little bit more bitter. So I'm not a big fan on a really firm press cigar. I don't think it's conducive to actually making the best tasting cigars. That's my opinion.
What are your thoughts, Juan? What do you think?
Not as deep as Steve's in the sense of the complexity. I just prefer the round format better. I don't know if it's a personal taste. I appreciate the box press. We have a lot of box press, but if I were to choose one to smoke regularly, I would prefer a round.
There you go.
And I think one of the things that's really interesting, this might be something for a future sampler that might be interesting, is to take the exact same blends and make them in
Yeah,
a traditional
yeah,
pareo
yeah.
versus a box press, because it is amazing. I said box press, I shouldn't, because it isn't really a box press, a trunk press, but it is amazing how different the same blend tastes when you do it in a prensado versus a pareo. It has a pretty significant impact on how the cigar actually tastes.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Would you rather swim a mile or run a mile?
Run.
I'm gonna float my way to the mile. Are you kidding me? I'm a fat man. I can swim a mile. It might take me an hour, but I can do it. Run a mile, there better be a zombie on my ass because that's the only way that's happening.
When you were in the Navy, Stephen, doing PT, was it running, swimming, or both? Did you have to do
It was
both?
both. You had to do both.
You had to do both. And
Yeah.
and was it always was always the one you preferred?
No, I was 183 pounds. The running was fine. It didn't matter. I was 183 pounds.
Would you rather binge a TV series or watch a film?
Ooh, depends on what the series is, man. If it's worth the intensity. No, I will go with the movie. I will go with the movie.
And I'd much rather go with this series because if it's a well-written series, it allows the story to develop. I like the serial aspect of it. You're constantly getting these cliffhangers. it's like constantly forcing me to, it's like another potato chip out of the bag. So yeah, a really well done series for me. Look, if the story's really good and the characters are really good and the actors are really good, I really don't want it to end. I want it to
Yeah.
go on as long as possible. So I'm definitely on the series side of that one.
Yeah, series I've
Well,
gotten
I
into,
think
they're really good. I feel that. Go ahead, Juan.
no, I think that's precisely my thing. I've seen so many series which they evolve and they start complicating the story so much that then it lost my interest at some point. So that's why I prefer limited span of the movie. That's done. Well,
Yeah.
let's move to the next one.
Yeah, that part of the series, of the expression you're looking for is jump the shark. It's a TV term.
You know what's weird? I find myself as I get something that I would have never done before, but I find myself doing it more and more is rewatching movies.
Yeah.
Like I would never rewatch the same movie. Never, ever. Like it was like, I've seen that. I'm not watching that again. And I have literally like I just watched Tomorrow War again yesterday. And I was like, wow, look, I'd already seen it. I already knew how it ended, but I still enjoyed it. So I find as I get older, I find myself revisiting some movies.
What series would you recommend right now?
Hmm. Right now, I think House of Dragons was particularly good. I think that one was that's a really, really good series. I think
Oh, that's a good one.
Slow Horses is an excellent series. I really like that one a lot. I'm watching one right now that I'm on the fence on. It's called The Old Man off FX. And it's a little plotting and it's a little introspective, but it's a rather intriguing story. I'm not sure whether I can recommend it yet because it's a little slow with like these moments of high action. But I'm in it now. I'm only like 5 episodes into it. I'm still there, but yeah, House of Dragons, Slow Horse is really good. I really enjoyed Fallout. I thought that was a good one.
That
I
was good.
saw that one.
I'm
That
really
was
looking
excellent.
forward to the new Squid Game that they're going to be putting out. I guess what that's coming at the end of this year. Squid Game. They're going to redo the second series in the Squid Game.
Yeah, I couldn't get into that one, man. I tried, but
Yeah.
I couldn't get into it for whatever reason. But yeah, but interesting. The fact that I watch movies on repeat constantly. I've some of my favorite films I've seen countless times. But that's actually maybe need that's another clue for you to slow down, Steve, and calm down, because watching movies on repeat is a tactic by people who suffer from anxiety. That would be me, because
Hmm.
it's predictable, right? You know the ending, right? So there's no anxiety, right? It's comforting. You like, I know, even on a thriller, if you know the ending, it takes away that anxiousness of
Oddly
watching
enough,
it
I
second
actually
time.
forget a lot of what happens in the movie because it was so long ago. Like I rewatched Game of Thrones, and I actually enjoyed it more the second time I watched the series than the first time because I was able to connect the dots much better because I had never read the books. So the first time I watched it, I really enjoyed it, but I then watched the entire series all the way through again, and I was like, I actually enjoyed it the second time through more than the first time through, even though I knew the general gist of the story, but there were a lot of parts of it I forgot.
Oh, nice. All right. You do not, I repeat, do not have to name names. Would you rather share a meal with a family member that you despise or a customer that you despise?
I don't really despise any family members. And luckily for me, I don't really despise any customers because I don't tend to have those customers. So I guess I would rather share a meal with a family member I despise.
Yeah, yeah,
To, yeah, I mean, look, family's still family.
yeah.
Would you rather have uncomfortable shoes or uncomfortable pants?
Shoot.
And
Um,
I'm definitely I'd rather have uncomfortable pants.
I used to say shoes, and then but I've recently I've had some really uncomfortable pairs of pants, and it's got me rethinking this question. Would you rather chill by yourself or go to a huge party?
Chill by myself, man.
Yeah,
What a-
definitely go by myself.
Would you say, so this is an interesting question. Would you say that you guys
Just
are
to put this in perspective, you have no idea how many parties I would go to in the past, and I would hang out for 45 minutes, and then I would leave, okay, and wait for my wife to send me a text to say, hey, you need to come back. Okay. That's a very common occurrence in the Saka household. I'll
Yeah.
go, I'll make the appearance, I'll do a little bit of small talk. Then I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go to the car and I'm going to get in it. I'm going to drive away. And the thing is, this happens so often that my wife knows this, right? She expects me to actually leave the party.
So would you guys say that you're introverted and forced into an extroverted world? Because cigars are very much an extroverted world, at least on the consumer side. Like they're at
Um,
the factory.
no,
It's
I
obviously
think I think
different.
most people in the cigar business are extroverts, right? I think, but
Yeah.
also it's a part of you do so much socializing that so let me so I like a lot of my wife's friends. I don't tend to like most of their husbands. You know,
The
so
same happens to me, man. Hopefully, none of them are watching, but
I don't even care if they are. So that's the difference. You
I
care, I don't
I
care.
I am I found this is the greatest example. This happened to me last year. I was the company I was working for at the time hosted a conference. So for 3 days, I literally talked nonstop. I did emceeing, I did podcasting, I did interviews, and then between those, I was mingling with people. So I was constantly talking and constantly having conversations and around people, right? And I was just exhausted, right? Just beat to the core. And the my vice president of marketing at the time, she was like, you should come to the after party. To most people are like who just spend 3 days of talking to people, the last thing they want to do is go do. And for me, I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, that'll definitely make me feel better. And I and
I
I
think
meant it 100%. Like I felt so good by going to this after party afterwards. I'm like,
so this is a really honest thing that probably isn't a good thing to say out loud, and I don't know if people will appreciate it, but I'm going to say it anyways. Doing these kind of like events that we have to do that are part of our business, they can become rather difficult, particularly when you're doing a lot of them back to back to back to back. Because I mean, look, you have the responsibility of being charming and engaging and witty and entertaining and trying to, like I did the thing in Hawaii. It was fantastic. Everyone was great. Loved it. Right? Everyone was so welcoming. There's 185 people there. So, I feel as though it's my responsibility to have a somewhat engaged conversation with everybody that's there, right? They're there because they're coming to a Dunbarton event. And I don't know that people realize just how much work that is when you're trying to do that. It's not that you don't want to do it, you actually do want to do it, okay? But in the end, having conversations, because you're talking about conversations that are in groups of 2 people and 4 people, that's you in a period of 4 hours trying to engage on a personal level. It's in some way that's meaningful with literally 30, 40 groups of people. And that's actually quite a big ask.
yeah,
And it's one thing when you say, okay, I'm going to do the Hawaii thing, but you have to understand just left the anniversary party for one of our retailers, and we were leaving Hawaii to then go do a dinner in Napa for another 100 people. And it's very exhausting because it's a lot more mentally challenging than I think a lot of people realize. Because
right,
it's very different when you're there attending the event as someone that's a participant versus being someone that feels as though, hey, I'm here as a host.
yeah.
And being a host comes with obligations. And it doesn't mean that you don't want to do it. In fact, you feel like you want to make sure they have a good time,
You
right?
can't leave after 45 minutes, man.
right.
You can't, right. Whereas when my wife takes me to something with her friends and it's whatever it is, it's the Christmas cookie party for the neighborhood, I can go in, I can pound down 12 cookies and then I can disappear. You know what I mean? Nobody's expecting me to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
And the time, the mental frame is different, right? When you go to a big consumer event or a trade event or an industry event, it's not that you're in the work mode, but you have an objective, you have a mission there. When you're in more of a socializing environment, it's really okay. I'm gonna go chat, hey, how are you, and up to date and
but you
whatever.
remember,
But
even when it's a cigar social thing, Juan, the people that you're with have expectations of you.
yeah,
Yeah.
Much
true.
more so than you're somebody that's coming to the event to smoke some cigars and hang out.
Yeah,
There's a level of expectation, and you feel a
exactly.
sense of responsibility to 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 do what you're supposed to do. And it doesn't mean that you don't enjoy it, but
Yeah.
it's very exhausting.
No, it
And
is, and I've seen this firsthand from you guys, and it's something that I really applaud for both of you in particular. Now, Steve, you and I have an annual tradition of this at every trade show. We have an interview at the end. We have an interview on the last day of each trade show, and
right.
this, to your point, you've done this, 4 or 5, 6 dozen times already. And our conversations are always highly engaging. Juan, we had the same experience this year too, where I interviewed you twice because our tape didn't work. So we interviewed on the second to last day, and then we came back in the morning. And I say this, and I'm really pleased that both of you are on this show too, because I found I always find our conversations incredibly interesting, and very entertaining. But my conversation with Juan this year was probably the most interesting conversation that I had all week. And
The
that's not
first
to
one or
say
the second one?
both actually, because I actually learned more stuff in the second one than I did in the first one. But like it was it was a beautiful conversation because I did learn so much. It was a very highly educational experience for me, which I totally just nerd out and dig. But our conversations are always highly engaging, Steve, because again, there's this
I'm normally drunk during them, so that helps a lot.
yeah, that helps you, but they're great because I've always appreciated this about you, Steve. You always challenge me to bring something different to the table because you feel like you answer the same question 50 times, and
I don't
that's
feel
some
like it. I do it.
yeah. Well, and
We
that's
all
something
do.
that's
We
something I
all
try.
do.
Yeah.
Like
So
we all live that Groundhog Day experience.
Yeah.
We
true
do.
story. All right, this couple more segments, guys, and we can call it a night here. So our next segment is brought to you by Postano Cigar. Everybody eats. If you always make sure that your serving style is bigger than your appetite, everybody will always get theirs. Postano Cigars is more than just great cigars made by cool people. They embody an attitude of gratitude and grit. With Postano, everybody eats. So, what is a food or dish that you love to share with other people?
Hmm. More than a dish itself, I discovered in cigar events the whole family style meal that you bring everything to the table and you share. Uh, I don't have a particular plate that I like to share, but in general, I love the concept of being able to share a bit of this, a bit of that. And I love also the tapas concept of the Spanish meals that you have small plates that you all share together and that you bring a bunch of different things to the table. I think the concepts themselves are nicer than the plates themselves that I can mention.
There you go. Nice. Steve, is it meatballs or is it something else?
But I think I'm along the line with it, because look, when you have a lot of diversity of food on the table, it makes the whole meal more interesting, right? Because then you're getting a wide variety of tastes, but you're also getting a wide variety of opinions, right? Because then it sparks conversation about this is better than that. I like this. I don't like that. So having that kind of that multiple dish thing, but I mean, if there's any one thing I think I enjoy the most, probably like a seafood boil, where it involves some like manual labor in order for you to eat. Like crabs and shrimp, and you got to peel it and all of that, because it forces the meal to slow down a bit. You know what I mean? Where it's like it takes time to eat it because you kind of got to work for that little bit of food to get it out. So it just makes the experience longer. So I
And
like,
it makes everybody dirty as well at the same
yeah,
level.
a little smelly also.
So Steve's so much of a workaholic, he likes to even work for his food. That's his favorite pastime. Juan, what's one of your favorite places to have a meal of this kind where you're sharing plates and things like that? At the restaurant, or is it at the family table, or what?
The family table is much better, man. I love home cooking. Wherever, if you invite me at your home, I appreciate it much better than if you invite me to a restaurant, man. I think there's something about homemade cooking that it's special. The gratitude is different. It tastes different. Tastes better.
Absolutely, I agree. Awesome. All right, next segment, which is brought to you by Asylum Cigars. Refuge is more than just a physical place. It can be a state of mind. Some of life's greatest reflections can be found in our own personal asylum. Moments like these were made for Asylum Cigars. So light up an asylum and choose your
Well, let me say,
refuge.
those are very profound taglines that you have in all this commercials, man.
Thank you. You see, my writing's not that bad, Steve. See, so Juan, I wanted to pose this question to you first, but Steve has often talked about to use a probably a little bit over dramatic term, but he's talked about the agony of working with certain blends and the pain that it and the hard work that it takes to finally get stuff. He talked about his difficulty with Krakatoa, and then also working with FSG to get the projects perfect and right. And at some point, I'm sure there was an aha moment that was like, this is it, right? What was the last time you were in the factory when you were working with on a blend that was particularly difficult and you had that aha moment? We finally hit it. What cigar was that, and what was that moment about?
I can't wait to hear this answer.
Sorry?
I can't wait to hear this answer.
It's for me, it's a challenge. I'll answer directly the question. The blend was the Cinco de Cinco blend. It took us a while to get to where we wanted to be, but for us, it's a challenge because unlike Steve, that he does blend primarily what he likes, so his aha moment is when he gets it right. Our aha moment is a bit more complex because we have other parties involved. For example, we do get involved. Our team, Mario at the factory, my father gets involved. So you have to align a lot of the expectations together. Plus, sometimes we also incorporate partners outside, some of our friends, be it distributors, be it retailers, some smokers, we also give it out. So we unfortunately fall into the trap of getting too much noise and separating it from the signal while we're in that process. So getting to the aha also implies for us not only getting the right blend, but also making sure that this blend makes sense for not only the portfolio that we already have, but also for the operation itself, for the factory. Do we have access on a reliable basis to this tobacco in a consistent time frame? So we think a bit deeper than just saying this is the blend itself. Does this blend tick all of the boxes in terms of the blend itself, but also in terms of what it requires to be alive and get to market and satisfy the wants and needs of the people? So Cinco de Cinco was that cigar for us. It hit it on the nail after a long process. Every blend that we develop, all of us, takes a long time. Because even for one, you like it one time, but you have to smoke it quite a few times to make sure that it's on point. Because there's so many influences from where you smoke it, the moment you smoke it, what you had smoked before, what other products you're smoking, tasting. So it's a long process. And I would say it's never an aha, boom. It's growing, it's there, it's getting there. Okay, I'm convinced. That's for me how it goes after a while.
What was particularly difficult about Cinco de Cinco? What about it was really particularly challenging?
Well, on the one side, we wanted to respect the origin of the project, which was getting some of the blends that we had in the blending sessions that we had at the factory for a while. We had about 10 years of records of blends that were getting the factory, so we wanted to play with that together to make the cigar distinct enough from the rest of our profile that people would say, okay, this is completely different from what we expect from Joya de Nicaragua.
Okay. Steve, I'm going to flip the question a little bit on you. You've talked a lot about the difficulties of some of the blends you've worked on. What was the easiest? What was the one that came together the quickest and you had the most satisfactory aha moment?
So I can say this: I've never had an aha moment. It's a lot of just like I make a lot of samples, like an absurd
Right.
amount sometimes.
He does. He does.
I mean, a crazy amount of samples, and I smoke a lot of cigars. So, aha, just really doesn't really ever actually happen. But probably one of the easier blends was the Mi Querida, because the Mi Querida blend is really just an extension of blends that I've been playing around with for either smoking or involved in for, a good almost 3 decades, a little longer actually.
Are you talking about the blue, the original?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but all of it, the blue, the black, the red. I mean, it's an area that I'm really, really familiar with. I'm really, really familiar with broadleaf blends. So the broadleaf blends are obviously the easiest blends for me to make. Those are the ones that I find to be the least challenging because I can pretty much I can whip together a broadleaf blend pretty much in a day or two and know it's going to be good because you just done so much of it over the years. Because you get to a point where you kind of know what works well with other things, and I know what I like, and I know what I dislike, and you've tried so many different variations of all of these things that isn't almost not even a blend. It's really just kind of a baseline grandma's recipe kind of thing, right? It's kind of where you're going from, and you're just making tweaks to grandma's recipe is what you're really doing. So those are the simplest, but no, it's but actual like, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh, aha, nah, that never happens. Look, there's like in so many different these products. Look, you're gonna see it in this Lancero collection. I just smoked all the Lanceros again this week. When we got the box in, I smoked all 10 of them. And in that box, there's probably 3 other cigars that could have easily been the one that was boxed to be now leave me the hell alone. Right?
Okay.
I mean, you could make an argument that the now leave me the hell alone was not the best of the Lanceros, but in that box, look, 9 of those blends that are in the box are ones that were made when we were making the now leave me the hell alone blend. They were blends that were made for now leave me the hell alone. That's what they are. Ultimately, I chose now leave me the hell alone to become the blend that got made as Muestra de Saka for the Lancero. There's 3, maybe even 4 that you say, huh, this one may have been a better one. This may have been where I should have gone with it. So there's rarely ever an aha kind of moment, at least for me.
Always the perfectionist, Steve. So, all right,
Or maybe the indecisive. I mean, you could go the other way with that, right?
There's that humility again. So here, we usually conclude our show with the curveball segment, but I moved it up. But in true curveball fashion, wanted to bring it back for one last curveball question here to conclude our night. So this is our last question of the night. So, do you believe personally that you were destined to be in the cigar business, or do you believe that it was your choice to ultimately be in the cigar business? It's a pretty philosophical question, so take it as you will.
I would say it definitely was my choice. I wasn't planning, expecting, or wanted to be in the cigar business before I came in until actually Steve and Jonathan pushed me to be more involved with my father, but I wasn't expecting really to get head in and fully committed to the cigar business. So yeah, it was my choice, and I'm thankful for it.
Where did you see yourself going? I don't know if I've ever asked you this question. Where did you think you were headed?
I wanted to do my own thing. Didn't have a concrete plan, but I wasn't expecting to follow on my father's footsteps. And it was actually when I met the people, the partnerships that we mentioned earlier, the Steve Sakas and the Jonathan Drews of the world as our clients, then our team at the factory and getting to know them and getting to see the impact and the value of what we were doing. From a simple place in Nicaragua, a family business, the cigars are being enjoyed and appreciated all over the world that has, the potential to share such a big story. That was the moment that I said, wow, this is much more than what I can do by myself. Whatever it was I could do by myself, working in this collective was going to be much more powerful than doing it just alone.
Nice. Well, I know I'm grateful, and I know Steve's grateful as well. That you
Thank you,
chose
man.
to go
Appreciate it.
this route.
No, I'm grateful too, man. It's been quite a ride.
Wonderful. Steve, destiny or choice?
Oh, definitely manifest destiny. Oh, yeah, but how could it not be a choice? My father didn't smoke cigars. Nobody in my family that I know of really smoked cigars. I mean, no, I mean, and I don't even know if it was a choice. It just kind of happened. I never had any real intent. Just
So then, what's destiny then?
kind of worked out that way. I think, look,
Right.
I think of so many things in your life. I mean, short of you're the kid that comes into college and go, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a lawyer. You know what I mean? I think there's
I,
very few times that you really make a conscious, you know what I mean? It's like
yeah.
it just kind of things kind of happen that kind of lead you down a path for a wide variety of different reasons. So, but I mean, yeah, of course it's a choice. What else could it be? I mean, I mean, destiny. Come on, man. We're getting a little we're getting a little too deep with that one.
Well, like I
I
said, it's a philosophical question. So,
I mean, look, I think you can make the argument that if anyone was more likely to be destined, it would be Juan, right? Because it comes from the company already existed. His father was in the business, following in the footsteps, carving his own path. I mean, that makes much more sense, right? That you could argue that somebody like Christian Aroa, right, or Drew Newman at JC Newman, more kind of a destiny. But even in their cases, it's still ultimately a choice, right? Because you're going to find that these people that are successful in our business, the people that are really good at it,
mhm.
they're just good people, right? They would be good at something else. There's no look, and I would even argue in some ways, like we have a business that's populated by a lot of like not so good people, okay, that you go, wow. But the truth is, they're not really the really uber successful ones, right? The people that are successful in our business, it goes back to that highly competitive part, right? I
Sure.
mean, if you're successful in this business, because it's a business of relatively low margins, it's a business that's wrought with all sorts of like crazy complexities that a lot of other businesses don't even have to take into consideration, whether they be from a tax point of view, whether they be from a regulatory view point of view, whether they be from a operating out of third world country point of view, whether it be, you know what I mean? It's not that you're dealing with an agricultural product that isn't as simple as I grow the product and then I sell the peach, right? You then got to transform the agricultural product, right? And then you have to figure out how do you market that agricultural product. It's a really, really, really complex business that really, from a dollars point of view, you can make a good living in the cigar business, okay, if you're successful at it, but most people don't.
Mhm.
Okay. And very, very few people actually end up becoming what you could even remotely consider wealthy. Okay. It's just not the way it works. I mean, when you look at the number of people that actually get wealthy in our business, whew, I mean, we're talking a pretty damn short list. Okay. That's what you're talking about. And you think about the time and the energy and the investment and the risk. There's a lot of better ways that if you're trying to actually become wealthy and do well in life financially, there's a lot better. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot easier paths. So I think anybody that's in the cigar business, I think it ultimately is a choice. I can't see how it could be anything else because you have to choose to take that pain. You do.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I think that's merit to both sides of it. You know, I get asked this question all the time, like how do I get how did I get into podcasting? Why cigars? And it's because I was such uh, an interesting consumer of cigars. You know, I'm not the guy the who you all make the most money off of is that guy who goes in and buys the box of Hoya Antonio, on a weekly basis, or a bulk of this business is a bunch of frequent cigar smokers are defined as people who smoke, a couple cigars a month. I'm not that person. I smoke, a couple cigars a day. And um and I think, but what was it, how I got into this, how I got into podcasting, I've answered it several times, and I just have this inane and probably annoying just sense of curiosity that the wonderful story that like Juan's told about his family's history and the history of Juan de Nicaragua and this next chapter, that he's like, there's still so many in my head, there's still so many questions that we would be here for another few hours, and I know you guys have to get to sleep at some point. Steve's ever perplexing because there's so many questions that I have left unanswered that I always want to ask, and it goes on with all of my guests. Like there's so many questions that I want to ask because I'm genuinely curious. And I think that's how I got into podcasting, was just like, I really wanted to know the answers to these questions because I got tired of reading articles, and I'm not saying they did a bad job of interviews in publications and things like that, but I got tired of reading those articles or hearing the same answers to questions on various podcasts. I'm like, this is an interesting follow-up. This is an interesting, like, what, that was an interesting choice. Why didn't you go this direction, or why didn't that happen? And so this affords me the opportunity to do it. And, I get to drag Steve on my birthday episode every year and annoy the shit out of him. So, I mean, double bonus.
I have to buy a birthday hat for next year.
Sounds good.
Wear a cone-shaped cap.
I would dig that. That would be great. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been a fantastic time. Really appreciate you both coming on and humoring me on my birthday. And
happy birthday, man. Happy birthday. Is it really today or is it another day?
It was yesterday. Oh,
so happy birthday yesterday.
See, it's not even his birthday. We're wishing him a happy birthday. How crazy is this? Good God.
Yeah. But
you invited the worst guest, man. The two guys that don't like birthdays.
Yeah.
We're 2 days long birthday celebration.
That's why he chooses me to do his birthday.
That's why Steve comes on every year. It's tongue in cheek. And he always brings great conversation, and this has been a fun tradition over the years, and I'll keep it going. But I was pleased to include you in it this year, Juan. I know you guys are doing an honor. I love what you guys are doing in Juan de Nicaragua, and I'm really looking forward to the exciting new chapters you guys are creating. And of course, Steve, the same with you as well. So thanks to my audience for staying up late with us. And as always, you can listen to us later on via podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, or wherever you listen to podcasts, including iHeartRadio. Don't forget to download, subscribe, and review. Tonight's audio broadcast is courtesy of Grand Habano Cigars. Honest, compassionate, great cigars. Be sure you download, subscribe, and review today. If you already are a subscriber, do me a favor, hit unsubscribe, but don't forget to hit resubscribe because that actually really helps my numbers. That way I can continue to ask Steve annoyingly every year to be on my birthday episode, as well as the constructive criticism. Love the feedback, love the comments that have actually coming in. This is great. To the guy a few years ago who gave me a 1-star review but didn't tell me why I suck, you suck. But the guy who gave me a 1-star review and told me it's because my audio levels suck, now that is something I can work on and something I continue to try and strive for. And Steve gave me a great idea to kick off this tonight's show. We're going to try to get a bumper in here so we're not just staring at each other before we launch the broadcast. So see, there's great suggestions all over the place. And you could have a great suggestion too. Just leave feedback when you are become a subscriber of ELOSOFUMAR Takes. You can check us out our YouTube channel as well, ELOSOFUMAR. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get notified every time a new episode releases. And as always, we'll see you every Sunday night live at 9:30 Central PM on our Facebook page, ELOSOFUMAR. Don't forget to hit the like button as well. You can find out all the great details of upcoming episodes. We have a great another milestone next week. We're celebrating our 7th anniversary here at ELOSOFUMARTAKES, so that'll be a great show as well. So you definitely want to tune in for that. But for everyone out there, we really do appreciate those likes, shares, and comments. Keep them coming. As always, I'm your host, Bear Duplessis, live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star Studio of Azle, Texas. He's Steve Saka. He's Juan Martinez. And guess what, everybody? See you next time.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, everybody.